What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 4TT Chapter 81 Khalifa, are there any special services? Please subscribe. Sir, how strong is this? Khalifa increased the strength in his hand and smiled softly. Yeah, not bad. Levi lay on the massage table with his back to Khalifa, a smile appearing on his face. If Violet were here at this time, she would definitely tremble violently. This kind of smiling face is all too familiar to Violet, and when Levi shows this kind of smile, it means he is going to do something sinister. How long have you been working as a beauty? Levi said suddenly. I've only been here half a year. Khalifa blurted out casually while rubbing Levi's back. She had already thought about the answers to these questions in her mind, just to prevent emergencies. Having been in the industry for half a year, I'm still an apprentice. No wonder my skills are so poor. I have nothing but good looks. Levi added. Ha ha. Khalifa laughed dryly and his eyelids twitched slightly. Was he dissing himself or praising himself? Are you from the long-handed clan? Levi asked again. Do you think I look like you? The corners of Khalifa's mouth twitched. His hands weren't long at all, right? No, Khalifa was patient and smiled politely. Then, why are you in this massage parlor? Isn't the specialty of this parlor a longhand massage? Khalifa's heart thumped. Is this discovering oneself, testing, or is it just chatting? A drop of cold sweat slipped from Khalifa's forehead. At this moment, she felt like she was walking on thin ice, fearing that she would fall into the bottomless abyss if she answered wrongly. However, even though Khalifa had many emotional changes in her heart, the strength in her hand remained stable without any change. Sir, most of these things are just gimmicks. The local snacks we set up on the streets of Guard Island are not necessarily made by local chefs on Guard Island. Khalifa smiled. I see. Levi nodded and didn't ask any further questions. It looks like it was fooled. Khalifa breathed a subtle sigh of relief. And just the next moment, Levi spoke again without warning. Do you have any special services here? What special service? Khalifa felt that she should not enter this massage parlor today. If she kept going like this, she would be scared to death by Levi sooner or later. It's about in-depth communication and soul searching, Levi explained seriously. Asterisk asterisk. She's going to call the police. That's not right, she wants to report it to the CP agency. Advertisement Levi, the lonely swordsman, is not only strong, he is also a cultural person, and he can talk about that thing in such a literary way. If Khalifa hadn't been smart and knew what this meant, Levi would have been deceived. Khalifa thought to herself, but pretended to be ignorant on her face. What is that? Curious. Yeah. Khalifa blinked. I won't tell you. Levi raised his hands comfortably and lay on the bed in a large shape. Finger pistol. Khalifa really wants to poke Levi in the head. This guy is just teasing her. Khalifa was roaring in her heart, but the movements of her hands were doing acupressure massage on Levi's back. Finger pistol or something. Forget it, Khalifa still doesn't dare. Stab you to death, stab you to death. Khalifa's fingers kept pressing on Levi's strong back, and she kept imagining in her mind how she would stab Levi with her finger pistol until his flesh was bloody, and the force on her hand became a little stronger. Hey, this is pretty strong. Levi breathed a sigh of relief, looking like he was enjoying it. He tilted his head slightly and turned his profile towards Khalifa. Actually, I can't tell you, beauty, are you a local? No, Khalifa shook his head. How about I tell you tonight? Khalifa. She finally couldn't hold herself any longer, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. What on earth is this guy thinking? Haha, no need, I suddenly don't want to know anymore. Carly smiled perfunctorily and spoke quickly. Levi smiled and didn't speak again. After another 2 minutes, Levi sat up, stretched his muscles and said. Okay, that's enough. It's quite comfortable. Khalifa exhaled, it was finally over. 084003417 Filu 171,570,330. She didn't want to be around Levi any longer, she was either scared to death or angry to death. Khalifa just wants to end this massage as soon as possible, send Levi away comfortably, and never appear in front of him again. However, as Levi finished speaking, he sat on the massage table with no intention of getting up. Those dark and deep eyes fell on Khalifa. Where are you from? Levi asked the question again. My hometown is Punk Island. Khalifa smiled and casually said the address. And in the next second, Levi suddenly said something that made Khalifa's hair stand on end. Advertisement, how many people have you killed? Khalifa's eyes suddenly shrank, and her originally relaxed heart suddenly became tense. Levi, found yourself? Khalifa was extremely nervous inside, but pretended to be confused on the outside. Sir, I don't quite understand what you were talking about. You should understand very well. Levi smiled. Khalifa took half a step back without leaving any trace. 6-style shaving is instantaneous, she wants to escape. Khalifa knows that she has been exposed, and at this moment, 780 Levi stood up suddenly, his right hand was as fast as lightning, he grabbed Khalifa's neck with great speed and pushed her against the wall. Boom! The whole massage parlor was trembling slightly. 113. Khalifa felt like she was being strangled by a savage beast. Levi's strength was so amazing that he couldn't break free. The feeling of suffocation came over him instantly. Get out! Khalifa's long legs wearing high-heeled leather boots were moving, and there was a faint light, and the Tempest kick was about to start. Kendo. She saw Levi's eyes. These are a pair of eyes as deep as the abyss. Boom. The mighty pressure was like mountains collapsing, or like a river bursting its banks, suppressing Khalifa. Open black lens bracket today's template. Hitsugaya Toshiro close black lens bracket. A beep sounded in Levi's ear. The huge Ryotsu covers Khalifa's whole body. I can't move. Khalifa's eyes widened, full of disbelief. Tempest kick's light is dissipating, and it's like there's a huge mountain pressing down on her body, unable to move at all. Next moment, Levi struck with his knife. Boom. Khalifa's vision went dark, he fainted on the spot, and stopped struggling completely. Chapter 82 Seastone Binding Technique, please subscribe. Boom. At the counter of the store, the old man from the Changshu tribe was eating lunch and drinking wine. Suddenly, there was a violent vibration in the store without warning, which made him stand up in shock. How can a massage be so shocking? People who don't know think that I am doing some shady things when I open my business. The Longhand clan uncle slapped his rice bowl on the table. He immediately got up and went to see which employee dared to do such an outrageous thing at work. At the same time, the curtain of the massage room was opened, and a tall and handsome man walked out with a blonde girl on his shoulders. Judging from the girl's appearance, she seemed to have fainted. The uncle of the Changshu clan was stunned. He remembered the man. He had just entered the store and said he wanted to buy a full set of Levi. But how come you are still carrying someone after the massage? The key point is that although this girl is wearing clothes from her own store, there is no one like her among the employees. Changshu Massage Parlor, all the staff are from the Changshu family. Your service here is pretty good. I'll come back next time if I have a chance. Levi walked past the uncle and greeted him friendly. Oh, the Longhand clan uncle was stunned. Although it's strange to carry someone out, but since he's not one of his employees, it shouldn't be any of his business, right? The long-handed uncle scratched his head and sat down again. Boss, please give me a shoulder massage. At this moment, another customer walked in from the door. He seemed to be a familiar customer. But when he saw Levi carrying Khalifa out of the house, he was stunned. Someone came for a massage and took away a beautiful young female employee? The next second, he jumped up suddenly, lay on the counter, grabbed the long-handed uncle by his collar, and shouted. Hey-ho! You said you don't have special services in your store. No, I won't do shoulder massage anymore. I want special F***G services too. How many times do I have to tell you that we, the Changshu clan, are all honest people? Even after Levi had walked out of the massage parlor, the noise behind him was still coming intermittently. Suddenly, the phone rang. Levi glanced sideways and saw that the phone in Khalifa's pocket was vibrating. Levi simply reached out and took out the phone and connected it. Advertisement, hello. Hearing Levi's voice, the person on the phone was obviously stunned, accompanied by a gasp. Levi, what did you do to Khalifa? Immediately afterwards, Liuqi's disbelieving voice rang out. Levi could feel Liuqi's nervousness and fear through the phone bug. He chuckled and said, that woman? She's dead. With that said, Levi glanced at Khalifa who had fainted. The moment Levi finished speaking, boom, inside the phone bug, there was a dull sound of heavy objects hitting, as if someone had punched something. What happens? Someone on the phone was asking, and the voice sounded slow and thick. It should be Bluno. Levi found Khalifa. Khalifa, she is dead. This is Liuqi's voice. How is it possible? Didn't we agree that the mission is just surveillance? How could he be killed? Kaku's roar came. When they heard that Levi had appeared on Guard Island, they gathered together as quickly as possible and were heading towards Guard Island, but they didn't expect to hear such news halfway. The next moment, Kaku grabbed the phone bug and roared angrily. Levi, we will definitely avenge Khalifa. However, he didn't say anything at all, and Levi smashed the phone bundle. Why do all the people in the world government have the same moral character? They shout and kill at every turn. Levi looked at the fragments of the phone bug on the ground and shook his head slightly. He stopped staying and walked forward carrying Khalifa into a hotel. Although the hotel owner had experience with Levi carrying the unconscious girl on his shoulders, he didn't look like a good guy. In Levi's posture, he was afraid that he would be unhappy if he said anything more, so he quickly helped Levi open a room. Go into the room. Levi threw the unconscious Khalifa on the bed with a snap. Just use this. Levi thought for a moment and took out the universal capsule again. This time, he took out the number 2 universal capsule. Boom, advertisement capsule number 2 was thrown by Levi on the bed and exploded. Smoke immediately rose. When it dissipated, what was revealed was a pile of seastone torture instruments. Handcuffs, chains, clamps, everything. These were all obtained by Levi from Doflamingo's treasure house when he overthrew him, and they came in handy at this time. When dealing with ability users, seastone is the most reassuring. Levi smiled and walked forward. Khalifa, who was unconscious, moved into various postures at will. First, his hands were tied to the bedside with seastone handcuffs. Click. The legs were spread out in a large shape and were fixed by chains. Well, it seems like there is still something missing. Levi touched his smooth chin and held the chain for a long time before leaving Khalifa with satisfaction. Khalifa after being manipulated by Levi. It's like wearing armor made of sea stone. From top to bottom, there is no place that is not covered by sea stone. It also looks a bit like a medieval knight. Levi looked at his masterpiece and nodded with satisfaction. But he didn't plan to deal with Khalifa yet. It was lunchtime and he planned to go out to eat something first. Levi finally looked back at the tightly tied Khalifa and quietly walked out of the room. I don't know if Khalifa just said it casually or if he really did some research. The street snacks on Guard Island are actually not made by locals. Boss, why do you write the words, local specialty, on the sign when you are not a local? Levi held a bunch of roasted tentacles of a certain animal unique to Guard Island in his hand and asked the boss, Wang Jiao. He still hasn't said anything yet. Isn't this tantamount to false propaganda and deceiving honest people? Little brother, don't be so arrogant. Although I am not a local, the baked goods are indeed local specialties. The exposed vendor showed no shame at all. Instead, he grinned widely. Seeing the appearance of the small vendors, Levi couldn't help but think of the old Baijin roast duck that he went to Baijin to eat. It turned out that the roast duck was a duck from other places, and the chef was also a chef from other places. They were exactly the same. However, Levi didn't argue anymore at this moment. Just now, a slender figure walked past him. It was a woman wearing pink clothes, with long pink hair flying in the air. Just looking at her profile, she could tell that she had a beautiful face. Reiju. The name came to Levi's mind. Levi looked at the expression on Reiju's face and where he was looking, wiped off the oil stains on his hands, threw the skewers into the trash can, and followed him. Chapter 83 Watering Khalifa with Honey Liquid, please subscribe. Street building area. A slender figure moved quickly through the alley. Every time it appeared, it happened to be in the shadow of the blind spot. There was not even a trace of the figure as it moved. She is the perfect warrior, the eldest daughter of the Vinsmoke family, Vinsmoke Reiju. And in the shadow that Reiju didn't notice, there was a figure always following closely behind him, of which Reiju was completely unaware. Reiju's eyes were always focused on the middle-aged man with a fat belly on the street. The middle-aged man is Liuqi, a high-ranking official from the Philippines who came to visit Guard Island, and he is also Reiju's assassination target this time. Reiju's eyes turned slightly and landed on the two strong men who were always following Liuqi. According to the information Reiju received, these two were bodyguards specially hired by Liuqi to protect him. They are both pirates with a bounty of 50 million. My life is really luxurious. Reiju narrowed his eyes and observed Liuqi. Liuqi is dressed in gold and silver, and his clothes are luxurious. Apparently there is a lot of searching for people's fat and people's cream. This is what Reiju said about Liuqi. However, this thought only passed away for a moment. Reiju was more observing Liuqi's movements and looking for the opportunity to assassinate him. What Reiju doesn't know is that while she is observing Liuqi, she is also being observed. That's Levi. What mission are you performing? 317. Levi thought for a moment and came to this conclusion based on Reiju's demeanor and actions. Immediately, Levi gave up the idea of following Reiju anymore. He came over to take a look out of curiosity, and now that he knew about it, he had no intention of taking care of it. There is something important waiting for him. Khalifa is still in the room. Levi stopped following them, turned around and walked to the avenue, preparing to return to the hotel. And at this time, Levi's eyes suddenly flashed slightly. After walking for a while, he entered a complicated trail again. After a few turns, Levi's figure disappeared. At the same time, 500 meters away from Levi, two figures poked their heads out from the shadows and looked at the deserted path. One of them punched the wall in anger. What a pity, I lost track. These two people were both wearing black suits, and they were both subordinates of the high-ranking official Liuqi. Another person comforted. It's normal to lose them. Those are actually the 5th Emperor's chickens. The man from before shook his head again and said, it's just a pity. I didn't expect to find Levi here. Lord Liuqi will definitely be interested in Levi's blood. His move, if Bob. There's Levi, the blood should be able to cure it. But at this moment, he couldn't say anything else. His pupils suddenly widened, and a huge fist was reflected in his pupils. Bang, bang. With two muffled sounds in succession, the two subordinates in black suits tilted their heads at the same time and fell straight to the ground. Advertisement in front of them, a tall figure appeared out of thin air. It was Levi who disappeared around the corner of the street. How to deal with these two guys? Levi patted the non-existent dust on his hands and looked around for something. Yes. Suddenly, Levi's eyes stopped and he looked in one direction. It was a small house with only one door number and 4 big characters written on it. Public toilet. A smile appeared on Levi's face. He picked up their collars and walked towards the toilet. Not long after, Levi came from the toilet, and the two subordinates in black suits in his hands had disappeared. It's time to go back. Levi looked up at the sky and walked towards the hotel again. And not long after Levi left, a middle-aged man rushed into the public toilet holding his stomach. The next second, a high decibel scream came from the toilet. Ah! There's someone in the pit, there's someone in the pit. Along with it, there's also the creepy sound of something squirting. Levi's mood was not affected at all by being followed. He had long been used to this kind of thing. At the moment, he has returned to the hotel. Opening the door, Khalifa was lying quietly on the bed, obviously not waking up from her coma. Seeing as you haven't had lunch yet, I brought you some. Levi talked to himself and picked up the plastic bag in his hand, which contained a bottle of yogurt. Khalifa, who was in a coma, still didn't move. Levi stepped forward, and when he was about to reach the edge of the bed, he suddenly paused. It seems like something is missing. Levi blinked. If it's just yogurt, it seems to be a little less effective. Still missing one smell. Woo woo woo, thinking in my mind, Levi, who just came in, walked out again. Not long after, Levi returned to the room, and in his hand was a bucket of liquid that exuded a fishy smell. The fishy flavored concoction sold by this boss is really delicious. Advertisement. Levi covered his nose, although he didn't know why the canteen downstairs sold strange things like fishy concoction. The yogurt is there, the smell is there, now the last step is left. Reconcile. Levi opened the lid of the yogurt and poured a large box of yogurt into an iron bucket filled with fishy condiment. With this mixture, the transparent, colorless, fishy-smelling concoction gradually becomes viscous and pure white. Soon, the contents of this iron bucket have turned into a bucket, smelly and sticky, with a little white strange liquid. Hey, it's almost done. Levi blinked. The contents of this bucket, whether it was smell or appearance, looked like something that would be eaten by river crabs just by talking about it. Next moment, Levi stood up, picked up the honey liquid, and walked towards Khalifa. As he walked, he was still murmuring softly, "When you live alone, you must have some fun, otherwise it will be really boring." Finished. Levi was already standing at the head of the bed. The first thing he did, untie Khalifa's sea stone bonds. Clang, with the sound of several heavy objects falling to the ground, all the sea stones that were tightly wrapped around Khalifa's body were untied. And this second thing, Levi moved his hand to Khalifa's clothes. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, all, good body. Levi whispered, and took out another universal capsule from the box. It was number 3. Boom. The smoke dispersed, and Wei already had a videophone bundle in his hand. Kakaka. Holding up the videophone and shooting continuously, Levi recorded the precious scene in front of him. Finished taking photos. Levi picked up the bucket of honey liquid again and poured it on Khalifa's body bit by bit. Legs, lower abdomen, chest, neck, even Khalifa's pre-face was drizzled with honey liquid by Levi. During this process, Khalifa's nose twitched slightly, as if she was smelled by the fishy smell concoction, but she still didn't look like she was about to wake up. It's enough to show how hard Levi hit with the knife. Chapter 84. Trying to get the blood of a man who looks like a demon. Please subscribe. Not long after, Levi poured out all the honey liquid in the bucket, and Khalifa's entire body was soaked in the honey liquid. Done. Levi glanced at the miserable state of Khalifa's body and nodded slightly. The next moment, he picked up Khalifa by the waist and threw her into the middle of the bed, arranging her body to look like it had been tortured, and even the sheets were messed up. Looking at this bed again, it looks like it has experienced a war. Levi nodded again. This time it was completely done. Who asked Khalifa to follow him? A sinister smile appeared on Levi's face again. He is not the kind of character who doesn't respond at all when disturbed. He is just like Lako's subordinate. He is probably still soaking in the cesspool, and he doesn't know if he drowned or not. Thinking to himself, Levi had already exited the room. However, he did not leave the hotel, but was going to another room. When booking a room, Levi checked into 2 rooms so that he could wait to hear what happened to Khalifa after she woke up. Well, the videophone bug stayed in a hidden corner and acted as a monitor. As for why? Anyway, there is nothing important to do now, and Wei is also looking forward to Khalifa's reaction. Leisurely exiting the door, Levi walked towards his room. At the same time, Reiju was walking in the corridor of the hotel. She had changed into a set of ordinary clothes, and there were signs of distress on the clothes. At this moment, Reiju looks like a traveler. She lowered the brim of the hat on her head, slightly covering her appearance, and her long pink hair was also tied up and hidden in the hat, just to hide it from others. Reiju's face remains calm, but she is making careful calculations in her heart. She is thinking about how to kill the high-ranking official Lako. The assassination must be thorough and fatal with one blow. There must be no unnecessary movements or any flaws. It is best to disguise it as an accident. This is the highest level of assassination. If someone dies in an accident, even if they investigate afterwards, they will only think that it is bad luck and a tragic accident, rather than someone doing it. And just when Reiju was immersed in thinking, she suddenly froze. At the end of the corridor, a tall and straight figure walked over. He was wearing a white windbreaker, with messy black hair, and a pair of dark eyes with leisure and calmness. Advertisement. The moment she saw the other person's appearance clearly, Reiju's beautiful eyes widened slightly, and she blinked almost subconsciously. This person is the 5th Emperor Levi. Reiju's whole body stiffened instantly, and there was an obvious pause in his steps. Levi walked towards her naturally and raised his hand to say hello. Buzz. Reiju felt a sudden roar in his head, and his scalp instantly became numb. But Levi didn't stop at all. He had already walked to his room, opened the door and disappeared from Reiju's sight. It was only then that the stiffness on Reiju's body eased, and she finally breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, she had a strange illusion, as if she saw a huge ghost behind Levi. It is a kind of oppressive force. It is not a real ghost or god appearing, but an illusion produced by people when they are extremely nervous and facing great terror. This is a ghostly man. This was Reiju's reaction after seeing Levi. Levi was not something she could resist. It was extremely scary. Just by saying hello to her, she felt the danger of a sharp sword slicing through her head. It seems. In front of Levi, you may lose your head at any time. Reiju raised his arms, and his fair and tender skin was covered with goosebumps. Reiju took a deep breath and walked into her room with a confused head. It wasn't until she closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed that she suddenly realized something. Levi lives next door. Reiju immediately became restless. She wanted to leave immediately, but she didn't dare. Because this is too weird. She has just checked out a room and is about to check out in the blink of an eye. Anyone will suspect that something is wrong, not to mention that it may affect the assassination operation and even cause Levi to misunderstand and notice her. The failure of the assassination operation is a small matter, but getting Levi's attention is the big deal. Reiju took several deep breaths in succession. She took out the phone tremblingly and dialed her father, the patriarch of the Vinsmoke family, Vinsmoke Judge. Father. Soon, the phone bug came together, and Reiju said in a trembling voice, I met Levi on Guard Island. Huh? The new emperor of the new world, Levi? Advertisement? On the other end of the phone came Judge's deep and dignified voice. This is a big ambition, and you can get the temperament of Judge just from his voice. Reiju responded softly. She didn't dare to speak loudly for fear of being discovered by Levi next door. On the other end of the phone, Judge's deep voice came, seeming to be thinking about something. Soon, the judge spoke again, his tone full of an irresistible command. Complete the assassination mission and try to get Levi's blood. When Reiju heard this, his expression instantly turned ugly. She knew what her father was thinking. Levi's blood could revive human flesh and bones, which had broken the taboo on the cycle of life and death. If an individual gets Levi's blood, he may live forever and avoid illness. But the significance to the Vinsmoke family goes far beyond individuals. Few people in the world know what the Vinsmoke family is really doing secretly. Research on human genetic engineering. Including Reiju, her brothers are all the product of genetic engineering. And if the Vinsmoke family can get Levi's blood, they may be able to advance this technology by leaps and bounds, and even create 6th and 7th emperors as powerful as Levi. Its significance is self-evident. After a long silence, Reiju spoke. I will try. She did not refuse because she knew that her father could not be refused. If she refused, her father would probably send others to perform this task, such as her 2 younger brothers. Judge's majestic voice sounded again in the phone bug. Only a tentative plan is needed. If there is no chance, don't try it. We can't let Levi notice us. Germa 66. Germa 66 is indeed a behemoth, and it has a certain status and influence in the world, but if it really encounters the monster Levi at this time, I am afraid that we will lose more than we win. After all, Levi is already an absolute powerhouse comparable to peak Whitebeard. Okay. Reiju nodded in agreement. She looked at the snow-white wall, her eyes flickering, and she didn't know what she was thinking. And right now, Reiju heard a high-decibel female scream. The source seems to be the next room. Chapter 85 An unexpected meeting between 2 people and 3 emperors. Please subscribe. This female scream was full of endless fear, as if she had been greatly frightened. Reiju, who is also a woman, paused slightly when hearing this voice, as if she could relate to it. And the next second, she discovered something. The scream did come from next door, but it didn't seem to be Levi's room. At the same time, Levi was drinking Coke, lying on his side on the bed with a leisurely look. He was holding a display screen in his hand, and the other end was connected to the videophone bug in Khalifa's room. Everything in the room was relayed to the screen in Levi's hand by the videophone bug. Scene, Levi took the last sip of ice-cold Coke, and Khalifa on the screen suddenly moved. She slowly opened her eyes. Then, Levi could see her eyes suddenly widen. 247. She sensed something was wrong. Khalifa sat up suddenly, and wiped her bare body with her palms. The sticky honey liquid flowed drop by drop from her hands, and it also exuded a strong fishy smell. Next moment, her face suddenly turned pale. A high-pitched scream burst out from Khalifa's red lips, and then the scream stopped abruptly. Khalifa actually fainted. Levi was slightly surprised. Could Khalifa be so intolerant of stimulation? Passed out immediately? After all, Khalifa is also a member of the CP organization, right? The quality of CP9 has improved again. It is indeed a lot worse than CP. Levi analyzed seriously. After saying that, he put the display aside, threw the finished Coke into the trash can, fell down, and fell asleep peacefully. A night of silence. Early the next morning, Levi woke up naturally. Advertisement. He picked up the display screen connected to the videophone. There was no picture anymore, and the sun was in snowflake like black and white. Apparently, the videophone bug in Khalifa's room had been removed. Levi didn't care about this. The punishment he gave Khalifa was over, so he could just leave. Levi stretched, washed up, and went out to prepare for breakfast. As soon as he closed the door, behind him, a clear and melodious voice sounded. "Hello. Are you Levi?" Levi looked back and saw Reiju standing behind him, with a sweet smile on her face and a hint of fanaticism in her eyes. Levi looked at Reiju, and he suddenly thought of a word, star-chasing girl? The way Reiju acted at this moment was very much like a fan who had admired Levi for a long time, and the words she spoke the next second were exactly the same. "I have always admired you. I didn't expect to meet you unexpectedly in this place today. Can you give me your autograph?" Reiju smiled very kindly, just like the little girl next door. After saying that, she hurriedly took out a pen and paper from her bag and handed it to Levi. "Can." Levi looked her over, then suddenly smiled, took the pen and paper from her hand, and wrote his name in a flash. "Thank you." Reiju took the signature, with stars shining in her beautiful eyes. She bowed deeply to Levi again, and then jumped away with joy. Watching Reiju's leaving figure, the smile on Levi's face still didn't fade. Your own fans. Of course it's fake. Does Germa66 want to deal with himself? Or does he have other things he wants to do? Levi gathered his thoughts, went downstairs to finish breakfast, and headed in the direction where Reiju left. And at the same time, the street suddenly became noisy. Some people were spreading out, and some were walking towards the port. A pirate ship has landed in the port. Someone stood on the second floor, looking up and shouting with the telescope in his hand. It seems to be a pirate ship affiliated with the Four Emperors, the ship of the Red Hair Pirates. The well-informed old man almost fainted in horror when he saw the scene at the port. There are very few pirates coming to Garda Island because there is really not much oil and water to fish on this island, but today a ship from the Four Emperors pirate group came. Moored right next to the Mahawk boat. Advertisement. A young tourist poked his head out from the third floor of the hotel. His eyes widened in horror. The view from the third floor allowed him to clearly see the port not far away, which almost scared him out of his wits. After this roar, the young traveler slammed the window. The originally lively street suddenly became depressed, and people hid in a hurry. There was only one person standing on the street. Levi. "Shanks is here." Levi was a little surprised. This street is very wide, and you can see the port at the end at a glance. Soon, in Levi's sight, two figures came towards him. One of them had gray hair and sharp facial lines. He had a rifle hanging from his waistband and a cigar in his mouth. The other person had short, messy yellow hair and a pair of eyes that seemed to be awake and not fully opened. Beckman, Margao. One person is the second in command of the Red Hair Pirates, and one person is the second in command of the Whitebeard Pirates. Two Four Emperors King and Vice level figures appear at the same time. Levi. Margao smiled and said hello to Levi. Obviously, the target of their trip is none other than Levi. As soon as the word, Levi, came out, all the people hiding nearby were shocked, and then their eyes widened and they looked at Levi in disbelief. This man who finished breakfast here is actually Levi, the lone swordsman. If the appearance of Beckman and Margao frightened them, then the moment they discovered Levi's identity, it was like thunder falling from the sky and exploding on their heads. He is Levi. The hotel owner took one look outside and hid under the table, shivering. There is one thing he is extremely lucky about right now. Fortunately, he didn't stop Levi when he carried Khalifa to check out the room in 3.1. The boss still remembers the look of despair in Khalifa's eyes when he left this morning. It must have been that he was tortured by Levi. If I had refused Levi to move in, would my head have already branched out? The boss's teeth were chattering and his face turned pale. At this moment, besides the scared hotel owner, more people were paying attention to the three people meeting on the street. People all opened their eyes and held their breath, not wanting to miss a moment. Beckman and Margot can undoubtedly represent the Red Hair Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates. And now they meet Levi. In other words, this is some kind of contact between the three emperors of the New World. No one could have imagined that Garda Island, a little known and poor island, would actually attract the gathering of the three emperors. Chapter 86. Only the strong are qualified to talk. Please subscribe. Call. A gentle breeze blew on the street, kicking up waves of flying sand. Levi, Beckman, and Margao stood opposite each other, looking at each other. The scene seems to pause at this moment. In the shadows, a blonde figure stared at this scene, his face full of solemnity and shock. It was Khalifa who left the hotel early in the morning. Originally she was angry about what Levi did to her, but now she has no time to think about it. Because the picture in front of you is enough to cause the entire Grand Line to tremble. In her hand she took out a new phone bug she had gotten this morning. Khalifa wants to connect to the world government, directly connect to the five elders. She had a hunch in her heart that Levi had met the lieutenants of the two emperor pirate groups. Such important news would definitely allow their CP9 team to completely make up for their mistakes and return to the old organization C. There is no need for a big battle to establish meritorious deeds. All you need to do is report the news. This is a huge meritorious service. With this military exploit, the CP9 team's sins can be cancelled, and they can even get favor and help from the Superiors 17. Khalifa took a deep breath and dialed a number, and the other party quickly connected. I want to connect with the five elders. I have important news to report. Khalifa took a deep breath and said. She can't directly connect to 5 elders yet. The call was only made to the CP agency's communications room. What? Khalifa, you have to know that you are a sinner and not qualified. On the other end of the phone, the cold tone of the CP agency sounded. As he was about to speak, he was interrupted by Khalifa. Levi is in contact with Red Hair Pirates Ben Beckman and Whitebeard Pirates Margot. What? Inside the phone bug, the steady tone of the CP organization suddenly rose, accompanied by the harsh sound of chairs sliding on the ground. This news made the connected CP organizations stand up from their chairs in shock. On the other side, in the shadow that is completely opposite to Khalifa, the disappeared Reiju came back again. She leaned against the wall and carefully explored Levi's 3 squares on the street. Something bad happened. Reiju was shocked. She originally wanted to have a relationship with Levi and find a chance to get a few drops of Levi's blood, but now the appearance of Beckman and Margot is undoubtedly a huge change. Advertisement. If you want to get close to Levi again, it will definitely not be that easy. No one knows what will happen to these 3 people in the next second. In the middle of the street, Levi looked at Beckman and Margot calmly. You're looking for me, he said softly. Upon hearing this, Beckman and Margot both had a flash of light in their eyes. Levi's expression, mannerisms and body posture did not change at all after seeing the 2 of them. This was a sign of confidence, enough to show that he was leisurely and carefree. Even if Levi is facing 2 great lieutenants, and even the Emperor pirates behind them. We didn't mean anything against you. Beckman took a puff of his cigar and said softly, we came to you to discuss something. Change a place. Beckman knew that the man in front of him was terrifying, and the 2 of them could not confront each other head-on, not to mention that this trip was not intended to conflict with Levi. Hear the words. Levi's eyes flickered. He vaguely guessed the purpose of their trip. You choose the location, so you don't have to worry about us setting an ambush for you. Margot scratched his disheveled hair, raised the corner of his mouth, and showed a smile. We really don't mean any harm. I wonder if we can have a friendly conversation. Levi glanced at him and Beckman and nodded gently. Okay. What about the location? Beckman put down his cigar. Levi chuckled lightly. He did not tell the location of the conversation, but instead said this sentence. If you can follow me, I will talk to you. Margot and Beckman looked at each other and saw a flash of light in each other's eyes. They know what Levi means. Only the strong have the right to speak. If you can't keep up with Levi, you won't even be qualified to talk. At this moment, Margot and Beckman both had smiles on their faces. This is in line with Levi's character, and only such a person can achieve his current status and become the world-famous 5th Emperor. A moment. Levi moved. There was no sound, not even a violent movement of air, but Levi just disappeared out of thin air and appeared hundreds of meters away at 10 incredible speeds. We can't let others look down upon us. Advertisement. Margot smiled. The words floated in the air, but before they could completely fall, he and Beckman's figures flickered, and they both disappeared at the same time. The way it disappeared was the same as Levi's. There wasn't much movement. Everything happened quietly. This was absolute control of power, and every move was made with the utmost precision. As a gust of breeze went away, the street where the 3 people were facing each other was now completely empty. Oops. In the shadows, Khalifa's footsteps moved. Just as she was about to chase them out, she lost the whereabouts of Levi and the 3 of them in an instant. She can't keep up. Damn, it's not easy to get this opportunity. Khalifa gritted her teeth and hung up the phone in her hand. If she could follow up and know the content of the conversation between Levi and the 3 of them, the value of this information would probably be higher. To an incredible extent. It's a pity that without Khalifa's strength is simply not enough for her to keep up with Levi's actions. The other side. Reiju looked at the deserted streets, his eyes flashing with thought. She also couldn't keep up with Levi's speed, but what she was thinking about at the moment was where Levi might go, predicting it in this speculative way. However, 403 still needs to deal with the high-ranking official Loco before that. Reiju took a deep breath, pressed the brim of her hat to cover her face, and walked into the shadows again. At the same time, at the city port, there was a roof of a high-rise building. Shua. A breeze blew, and 2 figures flashed out at the same time. Their clothes were hanging around. It was Beckman and Margot. And not far in front of the 2 of them, Levi's figure turned his back to them, sitting on the wall at the edge of the roof, looking relaxed and carefree, as if he had been waiting here for a long time, and he was holding a bottle in his hand. Freshly grilled lamb skewers. Beckman and Margot stared at Levi's back, with inexplicable brilliance flashing in their eyes. In the chase just now, Levi was able to do it with ease. And his speed was definitely not at the limit, and he even picked up a bunch of mutton skewers from somewhere halfway. Levi didn't use his full strength. Both of them came to this shocking conclusion in their hearts. Speed is also a type of strength. In this chase, Margot and Beckman have already lost to Levi. And right now, Levi turned around. He had finished eating the mutton skewers he had just picked up. He was playing with the bamboo sticks with one hand and raised his other hand, stretching out 3 fingers. I'll give you 3 minutes. Chapter 87. The Whitebeard Pirates will no longer exist. Please subscribe. Levi gave 3 minutes to talk. The pupils of Beckman and Margao shrank slightly at this moment. As the second in command of the two emperor pirate groups, they represent the two emperors of the sea to a certain extent. But now, facing the two four emperors pirate groups, Levi is only willing to give 3 minutes. This is unprecedented. Throughout history, no one has done such a move since the four emperors came to the New World. While arrogant, there is also a sense of indifference, as if it should be so. The most important thing is that Beckman and Margao are willing to accept these 3 minutes. The two of us are here for your blood. Beckman narrowed his eyes slightly and spoke softly. Before this, Shanks had rejected him once to find Levi, but when Margao came to contact him, he still agreed and chose to come here to find Levi. On the other side, Margao briefly spoke with a sincere expression. Levi, as long as you are willing to give some blood, we can do it for you on any condition, as long as we can achieve it. We can get any treasure you want for you, even if it is to pry the celestial dragon's heavenly gold. No one thought that Margao would be so decisive, and the moment he opened his mouth, he would be able to shock the world. Celestial gold, the collective name for the Bailey's surrender to celestial dragons from all over the world, can be said to contain the world's wealth and is one of the greatest treasures in the world. But no big thief dares to steal such an inestimable treasure, just because the price is too high, and the celestial dragons will be furious. The world government will therefore go all out to hunt down those who steal the heavenly gold. But for the sake of their captain and father, Beckman and Margao are willing to offend the celestial dragons and even go to war with the world government. Hear the words. There was not much shock on Levi's face. He seemed to have guessed all this. He looked at Margao. Are you doing it for Edward's body? Margao nodded heavily. Whitebeard's body was deteriorating day by day, and Margao could see it. He couldn't just sit back and watch his father's body deteriorate, and one day he even died on the bed. After Levi was confirmed, he looked at Beckman again. You are here for the red-haired arm. Beckman also nodded. Although Shanks said that losing his arm will not affect his strength, but will make him stronger, Beckman still hopes that Shanks can be intact. However, just after Beckman nodded, Levi suddenly burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? Beckman looked at Levi. Advertisement. No, I thought of something funny, please continue. Levi smiled and waved his hand, gesturing for the two of them to continue. Shanks, arm is a bet on the future. Levi wanted to laugh a little in his heart. How could the 3-4 emperors not defeat the king of the sea? And even got an arm bitten off. To be honest, Shanks' acting skills were a bit poor. In other words, Luffy has a carefree personality, otherwise anyone would find it strange. Levi, if you can provide us with blood, after Shanks' arm and Newgate's body are cured, the Red Hair Pirates and Whitebeard Pirates will respect you and become your most loyal allies. Beckman continued to speak, his expression very sincere. Levi also knows that what Beckman said is right. Based on the attitude of all the members of the Red Hair Group and Whitebeard Group towards Shanks and Whitebeard, if they really recover Shanks' arm and Whitebeard's body, the Red-Haired Group and the Whitebeard Group will indeed have a great impression on themselves, and the alliance is true. And once you form an alliance, it will be very useful to you. It will be more convenient to do many things in the future, and relatively fewer people will bother you. The next moment, Levi raised his head and said calmly, your conditions are very good and you are sincere enough, but I can't give you blood. Only Levi himself knew that his blood had no ability to liven the flesh and bones of the dead, and all these tempting conditions did not hold true. Margao and Beckman's expressions changed slightly when Levi refused, and at this moment Levi spoke again. Whether you believe it or not, my blood can't save anyone. 3 minutes are up and you can leave. Levi spoke very calmly, with no trace of lies in his dark eyes. Hear the words. Beckman and Margao both had their eyes twinkling. This was the last thing they wanted to hear. It could be said that they would rather Levi was lying than that he weighs rumors were false. Beckman thought about Levi resurrecting people before, and he wanted to speak again. And right now, Dex, there is a newspaper bird flying in the sky. A large number of newspapers are floating down from the sky, and on this newspaper delivery bird, there is also a radio that is constantly broadcasting the news. Advertisement. Breaking news, world government breaking news. Waves of announcements resounded in the sky, and newspapers rained down on the entire Garda Island at this moment. Margao and Beckman looked up at the same time, each grabbing a falling newspaper. Quote. Opening square bracket exclamation mark quote. The moment Beckman saw the content clearly, his pupils suddenly shrank. A headline filled the entire page, and it read, the son of Pirate King Roger, Ace was captured by Blackbeard and will be publicly executed at Marineford. Beckman was shocked. Sure enough, Shanks was right. Ace made a mistake by chasing Blackbeard, and now Ace has indeed fallen into the hands of Blackbeard and was handed over to the world government and will be publicly executed. On the other side, Margao's expression was extremely ugly. Teach. Margao's hand holding the newspaper was trembling, and these two words came out of his mouth in an extremely low voice. Before that, the entire Whitebeard pirates believed that Ace would be a sure winner in chasing Blackbeard. And now, Ace him. The next moment, Margao crumpled the newspaper into a ball and looked up at Levi. Levi, good money, I'm sorry for disturbing this meeting, I have to leave first. Margao said, turned around and left. He can't stay any longer. He has more important things to do now than Levi's blood. Levi, my conditions are always valid. If you want to trade in the future, you can contact me. I'm sorry for disturbing you this time. Beckman left Levi a contact information, turned around and left in a hurry. Ace is caught. Whitebeard must take action. This is a huge implication. Shanks should also take action. Watching the two people leaving one after another, Levi accurately threw the bamboo stick in his hand into the trash can on the roadside downstairs. He stood up and grabbed a piece of paper. Has Ace been caught during this period? Levi's eyes flickered. He turned and looked at Margao, who had turned into a phoenix and soared into the sky in the distance, and murmured softly. The Whitebeard pirates will no longer exist. Chapter 88. How about we meet honestly? Please subscribe. Looking at the retreating figures of Beckman and Margao, Levi withdrew his gaze. He stood up and turned to look at the street. Looking down from the tall building, Levi took in everything. In the intersecting streets on the east side, Khalifa was looking for traces of Levi from place to place. She looked very anxious and wanted to know where Levi was immediately. In the alley on the south side, Levi saw Reju's figure, but Reju was not as persistent as Khalifa. She left after looking for a few places. It seemed that she had other things. Levi ignored the two men. He wiped his hands with the newspaper, crumpled it into a ball and threw it away. If you haven't eaten enough, go get some more. With that said, Levi jumped up and fell straight to the ground. Call. A gust of breeze blew, and his figure disappeared in midair before it hit the ground. As time goes by, I don't know how long it has passed, but the rising sun has already turned into the setting sun and set over the western mountains. Reju was walking on the street, still wearing tourist clothes and looking dusty. Pedestrians on the street were busy, walking in the direction where Reju came from. Everyone looked curious and wanted to see the excitement. It is said that a high-ranking official had a heart attack and died while eating. Oh my god, doesn't he have any medicine on him? God knows, it is said to be sudden. This senior official has never had a heart attack before. Listening to the people's voices in her ears, Reju pressed 477 on the brim of her hat, and there was a chill in her eyes that had not yet dissipated. Assassination mission completed. Lakao, a senior official of the Wankai Kingdom, died of a sudden heart attack. Reju took a deep breath, covering up the sharpness on her body. Now she is going to try to get blood from Levi. Have you returned to the hotel? Reju was thinking in her mind. She didn't know where Levi would go. She could only go to the place where she first saw Levi. Bang bang luck. Reju remembers the location of the hotel very clearly. And just when she was about to go back to her trip, her eyes suddenly stopped. Advertisement. I saw. In a noodle shop on the street, there was a figure sitting astride a bench. He was holding a bowl of noodles in his hand and chatting and laughing with an old man opposite. And this person is none other than Levi. Reju's eyes flashed slightly. She subconsciously wanted to dodge, but she stopped immediately. Dodging would seem strange at this time. She pretended to be unconscious and leaned towards Levi, and the conversation between Levi and the old man became clearer. Little brother, you have to eat noodles like this. The old man grinned, raised one foot on the bench, and shook his legs while eating. The bowls and chopsticks also shook, and he had a chic temperament. Oh, shake your legs and eat at the same time. Levi blinked. Yes, the faster it shakes, the more delicious it will be. The old man smiled brightly. I'll try. Levi also laughed, raised one leg and stepped on the bench, shaking it while eating. Ha 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 ha, that's right. Do you think the noodles taste better? It's true, old man, you are right. Reju was suddenly stunned. She looked at Levi shaking his legs like an old man, and felt a sense of unreality in her heart. The fifth emperor, whose terrible reputation frightened the world, also had a side like this where he sat on a small bench, eating noodles and communicating happily with old people and old women. This made Reju have to wonder whether the person in front of him was Levi. Because this kind of life is far away from Reju, she has too many tasks to perform. There are too many things to consider, and the achievements of ordinary people's lives are far away from her. As a leader of the Vinsmoke family, this is not the case, let alone the fifth thickest Levi who rules the new world. But this is true. The person in front of him is Levi, and Reju will not admit his mistake. Gradually, Reju stopped. She stood half a street away from Levi, already lost in thought. She needs to get Levi's blood, which is very difficult. Even though, BHBD, she is the top assassin and a natural fighting machine, she feels unable to do anything when facing Levi. Even though Levi's back is turned to him at this moment, eating noodles like an ordinary person, but looking at his whole body, there is no weakness. Reju can be sure that if he strikes now, Levi will sweep off his head before the tip of the knife falls on his body. Still need to use other means. Reju is considering causing accidents, such as mosquito bites, and then trying to get blood from the mosquitoes. And in the next second, Reju suddenly realized something was wrong, and she suddenly raised her head. Levi in the noodle shop disappeared. Advertisement. Reju immediately searched around. She couldn't lose the trace of Levi, otherwise it would be difficult to find him again. Suddenly, the sound of wind came to Reju's ears. It seems like something fell from the sky. Reiju's eyes flashed, and she turned around suddenly, only to see Levi falling from the sky. The cloak behind him was fluttering in the wind, and he had a calm temperament. Hey, we meet again. Levi greeted her awkwardly. There was a trace of panic in the depths of Reiju's pupils, but her superior quality erased the torture and panic immediately, and replaced it with a kind of admiration. She put on the face of a fan again and said shyly, "Hey, I was discovered by you. When people saw you, they seemed to be getting closer." Reiju manages her facial expressions perfectly, accurately showing the enthusiasm and shyness of a little girl towards the person she admires, and beneath this, there is a deeper signal hidden. That is the affection of a girl. If it were anyone else, I'm afraid they would really feel sympathy for such a face. However, this does not include Levi. He chuckled. Germa 66, how about we be honest with each other? Don't waste time. At this moment, Reiju felt a thunder blast in his ears. Levi recognizes his identity. When his identity was revealed, in addition to being stunned, he also felt intense fear. The reason why Reiju dared to approach Levi like this was because she thought that Levi knew nothing about her and that she could shape herself into anyone. But now, Levi directly said Germa 66 as soon as he opened his mouth, he knew him thoroughly. Reiju subconsciously wanted to step back, but she stopped herself forcibly. If he shows panic at this time, Levi will definitely think that he wants to persecute him. If he dies, it won't be a big deal, but the family may suffer revenge from Heiwei. She was thinking about whether to follow Levi's words and tell her identity. This thought flashed through his mind, and Reiju made a decision. Reiju took a deep breath, and the enthusiasm and admiration on his face disappeared. I come from the Vinsmoke family, Vinsmoke Reiju. Chapter 89. Exchange one blood for another. Please subscribe. Levi, although I am from Germa 66, it is only my personal wish to contact you. I just cannot help but be curious and want to contact you. I have no other intention. Reiju lowered her head and said what she had planned in her mind. Although she told her origin, she did not tell her true purpose. Now she just wants to find an excuse to leave Levi quickly. The pressure to face Levi was too heavy, and Reiju didn't know how long he could hold on. Really not. Levi looked at Reiju and spoke softly. I hate liars, people who cheat again and again. Reiju of the Vinsmoke family, you have to think carefully. Levi's voice was very soft, but when this calm voice fell in Reiju's ears, it was more frightening than any threat. The deceiver will bear the wrath of the fifth emperor. Reiju's expression changed dramatically. She finally couldn't bear the pressure brought by Levi and subconsciously took a step back. Gulu. Reiju swallowed, raised her head, and met Levi's eyes. She saw a pair of dark eyes, with endless depth, without any emotion fluctuations, only calmness. This is a kind of overlooking, as if occupying the bottom of the peak overlooking, making people's hair stand on end, and the hair stands on end. What to do? Reiju's heart skipped a beat. She was now unsure whether Levi really knew anything or whether it was Zai herself. In the situation in front of me, every move I make will involve my family. If I am not careful, I will fall into the abyss, not only destroying myself, but also destroying my family together. Do we really want to keep looking forward to it? Is Levi cheating on himself? The next moment, Reiju took a deep breath, she made a decision in her heart again, and her whole body slumped. I'm here for your blood. The family needs a drop of your blood for research, and I was ordered to find a way to get your blood. Reiju finally gave up any thoughts of deception and honestly revealed his purpose. Sure enough, you are here for my blood. Levi's eyes were deep. He knew that the Vinsmoke family was doing genetic research behind the scenes, and the only way for Reiju to contact him was to get blood, and that was indeed the case now. After Reiju confessed, she lowered her head again and finally breathed a sigh of relief. But at this moment, Levi didn't react after listening to her words, which made her heart hang up again, and she didn't know anything about it. However, Reiju decided to confess and was actually prepared to be killed. She only had one idea, begging Levi not to involve the Vinsmoke family. Quote. Reiju's red lips opened slightly, she wanted to plead. At this moment, Levi's voice came. Advertisement. You want a drop of my blood, right? Reiju was stunned. The death she imagined did not appear. She raised her head blankly, and a look of astonishment flashed across her face. But she quickly reacted and nodded gently. Levi smiled, and he took steps towards Reiju. Fear appeared on Reiju's face. She didn't dare to stop where she was, and was forced to retreat by Levi. Boom. With his back pressed against the wall, Reiju had no way to retreat. I can give you a drop of blood. As Levi spoke, he walked up to Reiju who was leaning against the wall. He raised his hand and gently lifted Reiju's chin. Reiju was forced to look at Levi, but his heart was shocked. Levi, can you give yourself blood? This answer far exceeded her expectations. Is Levi's blood really so easy to get? As long as someone comes and reveals their intentions, Levi will give it. Reiju doesn't think so. When things go wrong, there must be a monster. Levi would say this. I'm afraid there is a deeper meaning. Reiju didn't have any excitement. Instead, she fell into thinking for a long time. Her lips moved slightly, and then she slowly spoke after a long time. What do we as the Vinsmoke family need to deliver? One blood for one blood, what do you think? Levi smiled. Hear the words. Reiju was stunned. She couldn't understand Levi's words, so she could only say tentatively. What do you mean? First blood. Our genetic technology. I'm not interested in that stuff. A malicious tease appeared in Levi's eyes. He lowered his head and whispered softly in Reiju's ear. The man's breath hit her face, and the hot breath between her lips hit Reiju's white and tender earlobes, making her tremble all over. Please give me flowers. Levi whispered in Reiju's ear and explained the meaning of first blood. ... It turns out that this is what it means. Reiju has understood what the first blood Levi wants. This also made her beautiful eyes widen slightly. She never expected that Levi would make such a request. Advertisement. ... But, is it worth it to trade one's own first blood for one drop of Levi's blood? At least, for the Vinsmoke family, and for his own father, he would definitely nod. This is the Vinsmoke family. All family members can sacrifice for the family, let alone. Reiju's eyes became firm. She did not avoid Levi's gaze, but faced him. How can I guarantee that you won't regret it? 0. No promises. Levi lifted her chin with one hand, with a slight smile on his lips, believe it or not. Reiju gritted his teeth. She knew that she was not qualified to negotiate with Levi at all. I agree to your request, Reiju said tremblingly. Levi looked at her deeply. The next moment, he took Reiju's soft and delicate hand and walked towards the hotel. On the other side, Khalifa, who had been looking for Levi all day, finally found the trace of Levi. At this moment Levi is walking towards a special hotel. Khalifa quietly hid in the shadows, watching Levi's back carefully. The hotel Levi is going to is a love hotel. Khalifa blinked and saw Levi holding a woman's hand and walking towards the hotel. This woman looks so familiar. Khalifa's heart moved and she remembered. This woman met Levi during the day and seemed to be an admirer of Levi. ... Levi, why would you go to a hotel with your admirers? Khalifa had doubts in her heart, but immediately gave them up. Levi is such a person. She thought about what Levi did to her during the day. Khalifa doesn't care about this anymore, gathering information is more important. Biting his lip, Khalifa followed Levi and walked into the hotel together. Chapter 90 Monitoring information for one night. Please subscribe. Khalifa entered the hotel, staggered the time with Levi, and got a room right next to Levi. He walked quietly to the next room. This time, Khalifa learned the lesson. After she installed the CP agency's special listening device on the wall of the room, she did not stay in the room. Instead, she left the hotel far away and ran to the roof of the building thousands of meters away to listen. Hopefully something will be discovered. Khalifa took a deep breath, put on her earphones, connected the monitoring device, and a trace of sound came out of the earphones. You take a shower first, or should I take a shower first? This was Levi's voice. Kr. The girl's slightly embarrassed voice sounded. Then there was a long silence and the sound of rushing water. Khalifa was not impatient at all and listened carefully, not wanting to miss any details. 30 minutes of boring silence passed. A short, weak cry broke the silence. Immediately afterwards, a strange sound rang from the headphones. Quote ? Khalifa's expression changed, and this voice made her think of what Levi did to her. At first, it felt like the world had collapsed, but after careful inspection later, Levi also knew that she actually didn't do anything to Levi, it was all Levi playing tricks on her. ... This time, was the girl also played by Levi? Khalifa couldn't help but think of this, but the problem is, this possibility is not high. Playing in front of others doesn't seem to be interesting. In the headphones, strange sounds were still ringing. Khalifa's face turned red and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. But she didn't dare to put down her earphones. Who knew if some key message would suddenly appear? Khalifa had no choice but to hold back and continue to listen carefully. Time goes by, the sun sets and rises again. Khalifa didn't expect that she would listen to it all night long. Khalifa opened her tired eyes and shivered. The key is that night, I was still on the roof, and the cold wind blew all night long. Advertisement. Damn it, how could there be such a man? Khalifa suddenly got up, took off his headphones in anger, and threw them to the ground with a thud. ... It's too much, it's too much. Khalifa's face was full of haggardness. If she just stayed up late, it would be nothing to her physique. But the crux of the matter is, she listened to the sound all night. No information at all. Also, is Levi a monster? He hasn't stopped all night. Isn't he tired? Khalifa took a deep breath, her high chest rising and falling one after another, and her face was full of a hopeless expression. And just at this time, the earphones that Khalifa threw to the ground suddenly sounded a different sound. You must do what you promised me. The girl's clear voice came out. Levi's voice sounded again. What? Khalifa was stunned for a moment. What did Levi promise? There is no time for Khalifa to think at this moment. Levi is about to leave. Khalifa immediately jumped up, jumped off the roof of the building vigorously, and landed lightly. She wanted to rush to the hotel to see if she could get some more information. At that moment, Khalifa figured something out. Levi didn't stop all night long. This not only shows that Levi is a monster, but also proves that there is something wrong with the woman who admires Levi. She is definitely not an ordinary person, otherwise she would not be able to withstand such a torment. The deal between Levi and her is definitely not simple. Khalifa rushed to the hotel as fast as possible. At the same time, inside the hotel room, Levi and Reiju have already sorted out their attire. Advertisement. Levi sat on the bedside. He cut his finger and squeezed the blood into the prepared body. Tick. A drop of blood fell and hit the bottom of the container, and the wound on Levi's finger healed instantly. Here you go. Levi stood up and handed the container containing a drop of his blood to Reiju. Reiju took the container from Levi's hand in a daze, with a faint blush on her face and seemed a little unresponsive. That's it. Got it. To be honest, Reiju never thought that she would get it so easily. She was prepared for Levi to make further demands on her, or even refuse to pay. Looking at the drop of bright red blood in the transparent container, Reiju felt a little like he was in a dream. Is this drop of blood what the whole world is crazy about wanting? Will my family status undergo earth-shaking changes from now on? Reiju couldn't help but think in his heart. Levi looked at her dazed look and chuckled. To be honest, what you want may not be possible. Only Levi knew that his blood had no effect at all as rumored, and that Reiju would be in vain if he took it back. After speaking, Levi patted Reiju's head gently. I am leaving. He has walked out of the room. One blood for another, he makes no loss in blood, and those who set his sights will always have to pay a price. Although doing this is a bit of a scumbag, it doesn't matter. If one is willing to beat the other, he will be a scumbag today. Reiju frowned slightly as she listened to Levi's words, not understanding what he meant. 4.3. I don't know if what I did today was right or not. Reiju's mood went up and down several times. But soon, Reiju's mind calmed down. No matter what, Reiju will not regret what he has done. But, it's only today, and she won't make this kind of deal again. Trading with the strongest man is not a loss. The corner of Reiju's mouth was bitter, as if he was comforting himself or sighing. Is this blood real or fake? She raised the transparent container in her hand and looked at the drop of Levi's blood, her doubts still not dispelled. All this came so easily, even if Reiju saw Levi cut his finger and dripping blood, she still couldn't completely believe it. Chapter 91 Khalifa, aren't you dead? Please subscribe. The hotel was deserted, everyone left in twos and threes. After Levi left the hotel, he walked towards the harbor. I had a great time appreciating the customs of Garda Island. The short rest was almost over and it was time to leave. Boss, I want special service. I said no, so I won't. If you keep messing around, I'll beat you up. You are talking nonsense, I saw it with my own eyes. There was a fierce quarrel in his ears, and Levi turned his head to look, dumbfounded. But I saw several people gathered around the door of the Changsho massage parlor, and they were arguing with the uncle of the Changsho tribe. Suddenly, the smile on Levi's face stopped, and he saw the calendar hanging on the wall of the massage parlor. June 3rd. Levi looked at the time and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Unknowingly, so much time has passed. The time is coming, it's time to go back. Levi raised his head and stared at the blue sky. A bird flew past and shuttled among the white clouds. This made Levi's memory ripples. But soon, Levi calmed down, he looked back and jumped on the boat. As the water surged, the boat had already set sail and was galloping towards the distant sea. Levi left Garda Island, and at the same time, a figure was running over in a hurry. It's Khalifa. Go. Khalifa panted and chased to the port, but could only see a fuzzy dot on the sea. Levi had already gone out to sea, and it was obvious that he could no longer catch up. She took a deep breath, not feeling too disappointed. After all, I still gained something this time. There was thought in Khalifa's eyes. She remembered the appearance of the girl who admired Levi. She said she couldn't restore it 100%, but there was no problem with a rough outline. With the strong intelligence network of the CP agency, she might be able to find out the girl's identity. At that time, there may be some speculation about the transaction between Levi and her. And just at this time, the sea is rolling in the distance, and a small boat is heading towards Garda Island. It's the CP9 team. Advertisement. Khalifa. Liuqi was stunned. The moment he saw Khalifa, his eyes suddenly widened. Khalifa. Not dead. Are you alright? Kuka was also stunned. Didn't Kunwei say it himself? Is Khalifa dead? Why would something happen to me? Khalifa frowned slightly. She didn't understand why everyone looked at her with such strange expressions. They were shocked and surprised and frightened. Levi said you were dead. Liuqi jumped off the boat and strode towards Khalifa. He wanted to see if Khalifa was injured. To make a long story short, I'll explain some things when I go back. Anyway, I'm fine. The corner of Khalifa's mouth twitched slightly. This Levi actually said such a thing when he was unconscious. Khalifa wouldn't even say anything about what happened to her yesterday. At most, I can tell you. I was knocked unconscious by Levi, but I can't talk about him spilling honey liquid on me anyway. Say it. It's so embarrassing. It's fine, where's Levi? Seeing that Khalifa didn't look injured, Liuqi immediately switched to work mode and asked calmly. He just went to see. What should we do? Khalifa asked. Hear the words. Liuqi's eyes flashed, and he gritted his teeth. Chase. This is an opportunity to make meritorious deeds. Only by collecting information about Levi can their CP9 team have a chance to return to the CP organization. Half a day later. World Government, Holy Land Mariajoy. In a quiet and luxurious room, the 5 elders gather here. Deng Deng stared. A CP agency man in a white suit pushed open the door and walked in. He lowered his head slightly to avoid looking directly at the 5 elders, holding a piece of intelligence in his hand. The CP agency put down the information in its hands and spoke respectfully. Sir 5 elders, newspapers announcing Ace's public execution have been distributed all over the world, and now everyone knows about it. Taoist 5 elders nodded slightly. The CP agency has always been very efficient in controlling fishing boats. This is also one of the main reasons why the world government can control the overall situation. He picked up the information on the table and flipped through it to read. And just the next moment. Advertisement. Taoist robe 5 elders lenses reflected a cold light, and his eyes changed slightly. Levi was in contact with Margot and Beckman. The Taoist 5 elders gently revealed the information. The air suddenly condensed, and the 5 elders all raised their heads at this moment, with inexplicable light shining in their eyes. Have the 3 emperors come into contact? The blonde 5 elders put down his teacup. He stood up and walked to the window sill. He suddenly opened the curtains and cast sunlight into the earth, making the space brighter instantly. The bright sunshine shone on the face of the blonde 5 elders. He narrowed his eyes and said solemnly, I think it is unlikely that they will cooperate. Ace's public execution is imminent. Newgate's character cannot sit still. If Levi wants to form an alliance with them, he will inevitably be involved in this battle. Levi was still pursuing leisure a few days ago, but now the world has finally turned their attention away from him. I don't think he will take the initiative to join this Uzumaki. The blonde crossed his chest with his hands, rubbed his chin, and said in a deep voice. That's right. The most likely deal between Levi and them is blood. These 200 days plus the manpower to monitor the red hair pirates and whitebeard pirates. If Shanks, Newgate's the physical recovery shows that they have reached an agreement secretly. The long-bearded 5 elders' lips moved slightly. Newgate may be able to cover it up, but Shanks' broken arm is too difficult to cover up. Yes. The CP agency on standby nodded immediately. He knew what 5 elders meant. Let people check whether the Vinsmoke family really has contact with Levi. Taoist 5 elders took out a highly restored portrait from the information. This is exactly the restored photo of Reiju. Yes. The CP agency nodded again. This time, the CP9 team has made a meritorious service. The Taoist 5 elders took off their glasses and slowly closed their eyes. We can consider letting them return to the CP institution. 3 days later, North Blue is a unique force in the world that does not have a fixed territory. It is composed of dozens of large ships that can move freely to form a huge maritime kingdom called the Kingdom of Germa. In the center of the Germa Kingdom, the tallest and largest castle is the residence of the highest ruler, the Vinsmoke family. At this moment, Reiju is standing in front of the laboratory, anxiously waiting for the results to come out. She just sent Levi's blood in. Chapter 92. Back to the beginning. Please subscribe. Time passes minute by minute. Boom. The laboratory door was finally opened, and Judge walked out with a gloomy face. Quote. Reiju looked at Judge's face and felt a thump in his heart. This drop of blood is fake. It can indeed be seen that its owner's physical fitness is very strong, and all the values are very different from ordinary people, but it does not have the ability to regenerate the flesh and bones of the living dead. Judge opened his palm, and on it was a container containing a drop of Levi's blood. Through the transparent container, you could clearly see the blood sloshing around. TXT. Judge looked at the container in his palm and frowned. The next moment he shook his head and analyzed to himself. Is it possible that Levi's blood doesn't have that effect? The rumors are false. Before he could finish speaking, the door to the research room was pushed open again. Researchers wearing protective suits walked up. Sir, the blood of Nelson, the man who was resurrected by Levi using the natural teeth, was analyzed, and residual special activity was found in his blood. This activity is enough to quickly restore a seriously injured and dying person to his full strength. Combined with the previous on-site investigation, it can be preliminarily confirmed that this person is a person who has been resurrected from the dead. The researcher spoke very fast, without noticing that his words were like a big slap on Judge's face. Reiju blinked. His father was saying that the rumors about Levi were false just now, but he was slapped in the face the next second. Judge frowned when he heard the researcher's words. He did not feel depressed because of being slapped in the face, but fell into deep thought. Levi's blood has no effect, but the blood of the man he revived has super high activity. What went wrong? The next second, Judge turned to look at Reiju. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. You were fooled. The only explanation that makes sense is that the blood Reiju got is not Levi's real blood at all. Reiju was stunned. There was not much surprise on her face, but a look of genuineness. Sure enough, I was deceived. Reiju looked a little dazed. That man, obviously squeezed out blood in front of her. What went wrong? Levi, you really don't intend to make a good deal. The first half of the Grand Line. A small boat with a mast like a cross was racing on the sea. On the seat on the boat, a tall figure was sitting upright. He had his legs crossed, his chin propped up with one hand, and his white coat behind him was flying in the wind. It's Levi. Suddenly. A sneeze. Levi's nose felt sore and he couldn't help but sneeze. Who's thinking about me? He rubbed his nose and looked back in the direction of New World. Next moment, Levi retracted his gaze and looked at the sea level in the distance. A small black spot is constantly enlarging, and it is a small island that is gradually becoming clearer. This small island is as poor as Garda, but it does not have the scenery of Garda. It can be said that it has no characteristics. But such a small island is the starting point for Levi to travel to this world. We're getting home. There was a hint of surprise in Levi's eyes. It turns out that so much time has passed without realizing it. Since the rumors emerged half a year ago, he has never returned to his hometown. Levi's parents died at an early age, and the only bond left with his hometown is the nostalgia of his hometown. The general trend of the world has made Levi an enemy of the whole world, and he does not want his hometown to be involved in the war. And Levi is not a fan of the Islanders. But today is a special day. Death anniversary. That year, Levi's parents were involved in a maritime accident and had an accident. It was this day, June 4th. Every June 4th, no matter where Levi is, he will rush back to clear the dust on his parents' tombstones. Suddenly, the boat has arrived at the coast of the island, and the sound of waves gently lapping on the beach can be clearly heard. Arrived. Advertisement. Levi converged his thoughts, the sadness in his eyes dissipated, and he became calm again. He stood up, stepped off the boat, and stepped lightly on the soft sand. And at the same time, many residents on the coast and beach saw Levi. He's back. A fisherman shook his hands, then fear appeared on his face, and he quickly turned his head, not daring to look at Levi again. It's him. Quick, don't look at him. A woman's face changed in the same way, her pale lips were trembling. The child beside her curiously poked his head out, wanting to see Levi. The anxious woman immediately held down the child's head and pulled him back. Panic, fear, worry. And underneath this, there is a guilty conscience. All perverted people have all caught Levi's attention before. There was even someone on the island who took the initiative to lead a bounty hunter to Levi's home. However, the man who led the way did not end well in the end. During the fight between Levi and the bounty hunter, he was accidentally shot by a stray bullet and his head exploded on the spot. These are also the reasons why Levi has no feelings for the islanders. Levi ignored these ordinary people who looked frightened and backed away from him, and walked step by step towards the other end of the island, which was close to the coast. It was his former home. After a while, Levi stopped, looking at the simple little house in front of him. He couldn't help but feel a little lost. The hearty laughter of my father coming back from fishing, the sound of my mother's needlework knitting clothes, everything seemed to reappear in this house, as if it was yesterday, vividly in my mind. You're back. Suddenly, an old voice sounded behind Levi, pulling him back from his thoughts. Grandma Mary. Levi turned his head, a smile on his face. Grandma Mary lives next door. She used to have a good relationship with Levi's family and would come over to help her from time to time. She is one of the few people who has never paid Levi any attention and is also one of the few people whom Levi still recognizes. Did you help clean the house in the past 6 months? Levi looked at the spotless and clean house and asked Granny Mary with a smile. It's been more than half a year since he left, but this old house hasn't accumulated dust. It's obvious that someone cleans it regularly. Your mother used to be a very clean person. Even if there was a little bit of dust in the house, she would not give up until she wiped it clean. Mother-in-law Mary had a nostalgic smile on her face. Yes, thank you very much. Levi nodded and smiled too. His mother had such an obsessive-compulsive disorder. He doesn't have much sadness. The past has passed, but the memories are very beautiful. Brother Levi, Grandma. Suddenly a voice of joy came from the distance. When Levi looked over, he saw little Susie with braids jumping over, with a very friendly and contagious smile on her young face. Little Susie has grown up. Levi rubbed her head. Mother-in-law Mary was just such a little girl, but she was very sensible and had no trouble in her memory. She would also give her some fruits every now and then. Hey. Little Susie took Grandma Mary's hand and pointed at the bird. Madara's cheeks bulged when she smiled, which was very cute. I didn't bring anything good when I came back this time. Bailey is really good. You can buy some snacks and toys you like. Levi smiled and took out a bag of Bailey and handed it to little Susie as a meeting gift. The quantity is just right, neither too little nor too much to be coveted. Thank you, brother Levi. Little Susie took Bailey with a smile. There was not so much politeness between her and Levi. In the past, Levi would occasionally bring her gifts when he came back, and little Susie would also make delicious food for Levi with her own hands. Let's go. "Brother Levi, come to our house for dinner. The red fruits are ripe and delicious." Little Susie smiled and held Levi's hand to leave. "Wait a minute, I'm going to meet my parents." Levi rubbed little Susie's head. Quote. Little Susie paused and subconsciously loosened her fingers. Levi had turned around and headed towards the place where his parents were buried. It was on the edge of a cliff. Levi hoped that these two lovely people who had been with the sea all their lives could look at his favorite sea forever. Behind him, little Susie's big eyes were dim. Grandma Mary looked at Levi's retreating back. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she hesitated. In front of the sea cliff, Levi's steps paused. In front of him, there was a ruin, and the earth was cracked with cracks, as if this cliff was about to fall into the sea at any time. Near the sea, the two raised stone tombs are a little crooked, and they were obviously damaged and then repaired. Someone touched their parents' graves. Advertisement. Levi quietly took in all this, his expression unchanged. Oh. A gust of cold wind blew by, and the white rabbit jumping on the grass suddenly shivered. It seemed to be crazy, jumping quickly and running towards the rabbit hole. Quote. The little green snake suddenly stood up, as if it had been greatly frightened, and twisted its body in panic, trying to escape from this place as quickly as possible. In the sky, a seabird made a rapid cry, flapped its wings in panic, and shed a sheet of white feathers. Levi stood quietly, watching the feathers fall down and quietly land on the scattered stone graves. Quote. Levi, I helped you repair the tomb. Old lady, I am old and have only this ability. I couldn't repair it completely. But don't worry, it's just that the outer stones are a little scattered, and the inner stones are just a little scattered. It's fine. From behind, Granny Mary walked up. She looked at Levi's back and let out a long sigh. Mother-in-law, what's going on? Levi looked at the grave, his eyes revealing a kind of calmness that made people's hearts tremble. 6 months ago, not long after you left, a group of ferocious pirates came here. I heard that their reward was so high that no one in the whole village dared to resist. They came for you, but you left long ago. They missed the opportunity. Some people are very angry. A look of intolerance flashed across Granny Mary's face, and she spoke seriously. Before leaving, they fired artillery and bombed the grave. What's the name of that group of pirates? Levi didn't turn around, turned his back to Granny Mary, and asked softly. It seems to be called Kim Pirates, Granny Mary recalled. Levi nodded, turned around, and smiled at Granny Mary. Thank you. Finished. Levi stepped forward, clasped his hands together, and bowed 3 times to the tombstone. He got up and walked towards the village again. He was leaving. Brother Levi, are you leaving? Little Susie ran up, holding the red fruit in her hand. She understood Levi's expression and looked a little disappointed. Well, I want to go out. Levi nodded. Brother Levi, are you back? Little Susie raised her head and held the ripe red fruit tightly in her little hands. Come back, this trip won't last long. Prophet. Wei said softly. He squatted down, touched the top of little Susie's head, and took out 2 bags of Baileys and stuffed them into her hands. You can take these Baileys, my mother-in-law is old, and only if she has money can she take good care of her. Quote. What are you going to do, big brother? Little Susie blinked and asked. Go buy some stuff, Levi said as he stood up to leave. Wait, bring the red fruit, it's delicious. Little Susie stepped forward, holding the red fruit in both hands and placing it in front of Levi. Good. Levi took the red fruit, took a bite, and smiled. It's really sweet. Finished. He turned around, and this time, his footsteps did not stop at all, and gradually went away. Mother-in-law Mary looked at Levi's leaving back. She seemed to be talking to herself, murmuring. John's family gave birth to a good child. John and Guy's life was miserable. The couple never had a good life in their lives. Levi, the child, was also very good. He had a lot of skills and could have lived a good life. It's easy, but fortune plays a trick on people, which makes life miserable. After Grandma Mary finished speaking, she couldn't help but sigh. Levi's back is getting further and further away. He has reached Linhai and is about to leave. Kim Pirates. Levi murmured, a glimmer of light flashing in his dark eyes. To find them, we only have to rely on our own strength, because it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Said. Levi suddenly looked up. He looked into the distance. It was a small island with towering fortresses standing on it. It was a marine branch. Chapter 93. Borrowing the Marine Intelligence Network. Please subscribe. Marine Branch No. 268. Located in the first half of the Grand Line. This branch, like other branches located in the first half, did not have many major tasks in the past. Most of the time it was calm and the task was completed by suppressing some small pirates. And today, branch number 268, the highest alert alarm, resounded over the entire island. Alert. Marine, who was guarding the door, held a telescope in his hand and shouted with a look of extreme horror. His whole face even turned red, as if his neck was stuck. At this moment, every Marine guarding the branch door is like this, looking extremely terrified. Deep inside the branch, all Marines were in action, forming small teams and rushing toward the door. 3,000 Marines from the entire branch came together. This combined force cannot be underestimated. It is a force that can even destroy the pirate group with a billion bounty. But at this moment, among the 3,000 Marines gathered together, no one felt safe. They were all breaking out in cold sweat, and the hands holding Wu were shaking slightly. All this is just because, in front of the branch's gate, 470 a figure is approaching. He is tall and straight, with a calm face, and his black hair is flying in the wind. His face is obviously calm, but it gives people infinite pressure. As he walked step by step, it seemed as if there were vast waves roaring behind him, and as if thousands of evil man-eating ghosts were coming out of their cages, making people feel fear for no reason and tremble uncontrollably. The fifth emperor, Levi, Vice Admiral Pete, who was guarding branch 268, suddenly narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "This is a big name that has caused great trauma to Marine." He single-handedly defeated half of Marine, forcing General Staff Heck to sacrifice his life for Marine's stability. However, even if Marine suffered such a big blow, it has not launched another action against Levi until now, which has already sent a message. Marine. Scared. And now, this man who scares Marine has come to branch 268. Watching Levi walking step by step, Peter's eyes were trembling, and he couldn't help but swallow saliva in his throat. Levi today is a little different. BHCG. Advertisement. In the past, Peter had heard rumors about Levi. Levi's character was very laid back, but today, this kind of laid back attitude is gone. Instead, there was a terrifying aura that made people tremble in fear of this man even from far away. "Levi, what are you doing? This is the Marine branch." At the front, the Marine soldiers screamed in horror. Levi has come closer. However, before Marine could finish his words, Levi's calm voice sounded. "Use your intelligence network to investigate a matter." At the same time, Naval Headquarters, Marineford. Marshal Sengoku's room. In the spacious office, Sengoku, Garp, and Porcelino were all gathered together. What is surprising is that he, who has been awake for a while, is also in the office. It's just that, he has resigned at this time and is no longer the Marines' general staff. She has shouldered the responsibility for the failure of the encirclement and suppression operation. Now she only retains the nominal rank of Vice Admiral and does not actually participate in any Marine operations. She is ahead of schedule. A life of leisure and retirement. I said that even if you resign, you should at least come and see us old guys, otherwise I will age prematurely by looking at Sengoku's stinky face all day long. Garp said with a grin while making tea for Crane. Hearing this, he laughed. Since she left office, she has rarely had an office building. Today, she had no choice but to be forcibly pulled into Sengoku's office by Garp. "Garp, you old guy, are you talking bad words in front of me?" Sengoku stared at Garp, his eyelids twitching wildly. PFF ha 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 ha. Seeing Sengoku's appearance, Garp slapped his legs and laughed, as if he said that just to stimulate Sengoku. "Okay, let's talk about business." Sengoku's eyes twitched, and he suppressed the urge to beat Garp violently, and brought the topic back on track. "There is recent information that Levi has returned from the New World." Advertisement. Garp paused, a look of confusion flashed across his face. "Oh, maybe you're tired of staying in the New World." Porcelino drank black tea and smiled lazily. In less than a month, New World was turned upside down. Doflamingo was killed, Kaido was defeated, it seems like a country was liberated, right? He put down the teacup, leaned back on the chair, and stretched. Levi is worthy of being the man who is about to become the #1 in the world. This energy alone is enviable. By the end of my age, even if I move even 10 times, I will feel very tired. The crane next to him smiled and shook his head. "Pelusolino, if you continue to be lazy, you may get Alzheimer's disease early." "Oh, Ms. He can actually say such a thing, it's really surprising." Porcelino put on a surprised face. "I have to say that there have been great changes since he left office. Levi's ability to make trouble is probably the best in the world." Sengoku rubbed his eyebrows and felt a little headache. Some time ago, there was an incident of 3 emperors meeting. "I'm afraid the 5 elders will have a headache." Ha 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 ha. "Those 5 old guys are going to be shocked, right? They may not even be able to sleep well." Garp grinned, showing no fear of the 5 elders. Porcelino's eyes flashed under his sunglasses, and he said with a teasing tone, "Oh, Mr. Garp calls him that." Garp pursed his lips indifferently. He didn't like what the 5 elders did, and he was repelled by the nobility of the celestial dragons. Looking at the entire marine, only Garp dares to say the words, 5 old guys. Just at this time, the office door was pushed open. The marine correspondent rushed in hastily. He didn't even have time to shout the report, and he didn't even have time to perform the military salute, so he reported the report as quickly as possible. No. 268 Marine branch was attacked by Levi, who has now broken into the branch. Boom. This news, like thunder, exploded in the office, causing everyone's expression to change suddenly. No one could have guessed that the first thing Levi did when he returned to the New World was to attack the Marine branch. Chapter 94. Levi's bottom line. This sea will bleed. Please subscribe. This moment, the top floors of all major Marines in the office were shaken by this news. Oh yeah, poor Salino stopped shaking Hongcha's arm, opened his mouth slightly, and put on a funny expression of surprise. Garp frowned. He had been in contact with Levi and knew Levi's character. Logically speaking, Levi would not take the initiative to attack Marine. This is also true. Although Levi is unprecedentedly powerful, the threat level is actually not as high as that of other pirates. This is why Marine knows that he has not done anything against Levi again today. But today, all this changed. Levi took the initiative to attack the Marine branch. Attack. Branch. There was a flash of light in the crane's eyes, and he was thoughtful. What's going on? Detailed report. Sengoku crossed his hands and put his chin on his hands, speaking in a heavy tone, and a gleam of light reflected from the toad lens. Yes, Marshal. The Marine communications soldier straightened his back. His face still showed shock and urgency, but he gradually calmed down in front of Sengoku and slowed down his speech. After Levi broke into the branch, he did not cause large-scale casualties. He only used the branch's intelligence network to investigate information about a group called the Kim Pirates. Hear the words. Oh yeah. Poor Salino closed the tea lid and put down the black tea. What outrageous thing did this Kim Pirates do? Why did Levi spend so much money to find it? He also had contact with Levi and knew Levi's character. In fact, to a certain extent, Levi was very similar to himself and was not someone who would take the initiative to seek trouble. And now Levi takes the initiative to attack the Marine branch. This behavior can be said to have broken Levi's consistent code of conduct. As for the strong people at their level, they have actually become accustomed to their own code of conduct, and generally they will not change it unless they have to. And once it changes, it's definitely because someone touched the bottom line. Just like Whitebeard Newgate, he would never take action against his own son, but he would only take action against Blackbeard, because Blackbeard betrayed Whitebeard and broke Whitebeard's bottom line. So this time, it was the Kim Pirates that broke Levi's bottom line. But what's Levi's bottom line? Advertisement. Poor Salino couldn't guess, so he thought of another possibility. Could there be any relatives of his in this pirate group? Levi is always lonely, and no one can believe him. If a loved one really appears in the world, Levi will spend a lot of money to find him, right? He shook his head. No, if you are looking for relatives, Levi's character should be able to negotiate, and he chose to break in after the negotiations failed. But now Levi rushes into branch 268 without asking, which shows. This is not what a good situation. At this moment, he was thinking more than anyone present. In fact, she was already in early retirement and was just holding a false position. And her free time is spent studying Levi. In other words, Crane also plans to use it to study Levi in the coming years. This is not because Crane wants to take revenge or find an opportunity to kill Levi, but he just wants to understand what kind of person Levi is. This can be regarded as a kind of life after he retires. The message behind Levi's actions is very clear to Crane. There is definitely something wrong with this. Garp didn't speak. He kept mumbling, his brows furrowed into the Chinese character, Chuan. How do you think this matter should be handled? Sengoku rubbed his temples and frowned, a little unsure. Don't worry, Marine can't afford to fight Levi now, he said softly. After leaving her job, she saw many issues more clearly from the perspective of a bystander, and it was easier for her to speak out about some things. While he was thinking about this issue, he also had to put a personal touch on it. She is no longer Marine's chief advisor, so she no longer needs to be cold and ruthless. It was a fact that Levi spared her life. Well, let me think about it. Sengoku listened to his opinion and fell into deep thought, and did not make a decision quickly. And just at this time. Quote. Please give me flowers. The phone on Sengoku's desk started ringing. Hello. Sengoku connected immediately, and the next moment, his eyes widened and a look of intense shock appeared on his face. Seeing Sengoku's expression, the expressions of several people present changed again. The information coming from this phone call is definitely not simple. Advertisement. I see. Sengoku hung up the phone, took a deep breath, and spoke to everyone present. I found out why Levi did this. He paused for a moment and said something that shocked everyone. The Kim pirates bombarded the graves of Levi's parents. Everyone looked shocked. Is this the reason why Levi raided the branch? No wonder he did this. They have touched Levi's bottom line. Crane's eyes flashed. It was definitely a terrible thing to offend Levi. During the Battle of King's Landing, she knew very well that Levi's bottom line had been touched, so she took the killing blow, but after all those 10 times, Song made Levi a little irritated, not too angry. But now, what the Kim pirates are doing is definitely really irritating to Levi. He could imagine that the flames in Levi's heart that could burn the world were burning. This is unimaginably narrow and long, and Levi can defeat Marine just by being annoyed. So, what will happen if he is angry? He suddenly felt a chill rising from the bottom of his heart. This sea will be stained with blood again. And right now. Garp, who had been silent until now, suddenly raised his head, his eyes flickered, and he said in a deep voice, Weren't this Kim pirates captured by Sakazuki himself 5 months ago? Arrest yourself. These 4 words rang in Sengoku's ears. This means, the location of the Kim pirates is in the undersea prison Impel Down. And Levi has already found Impel Down. Quick, notify the undersea prison immediately. Sengoku stood up suddenly, shocked. Chapter 95. Before anyone arrived, pressure enveloped the underwater prison. Please subscribe. The first half of the Grand Line. The sea water here seems to have condensed into a solid body. The sea surface is calm, the turbulence of the water flow is slightly weak, and there is almost no trace of flow. There is no wind here all year round, so it's called the calm belt. Known as the world's most impenetrable prison, Impel Down is built on the calm belt. Because most of Impel Down is located under the sea, it is also known as the undersea prison. At this moment, Impel Down, the warden's office. PFF'd. A weird squirting sound accompanied by an unpleasant stench came out of the office toilet. Warden Magellan has diarrhea again. Hannibal rushed out of the office in a panic. Before he could finish his words, he fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth, and his limbs were still twitching slightly. Idiot, how many times have I told you, 943, not to enter the office when the warden is pooping? The warden's poop is poisonous. Domino walked out of the shadow of despair, grabbed the little wings on his back and dragged him outside, for fear that he would be poisoned by shit while lying here. On the other side, the chief warden Sati-chan was far away. He was not surprised at this scene, but felt a sense of helplessness that he was accustomed to. Apparently, this isn't the first time this has happened. Hey, I'm sorry, I'll install a gas-proof door in the toilet next time. Magellan pushed open the toilet door, laughed dryly, and looked extremely embarrassed. As a user with poison fruit ability, Magellan's whole body is highly poisonous. Even the poisonous gas brought to his mouth will inevitably be contaminated by the poison. Although Magellan will not suffer any consequences after eating poisonous food, diarrhea is unavoidable. The things he pulls out are naturally highly poisonous. Magellan had an embarrassment on his face. He was just about to pay attention to the situation of Hannibal, who had fainted from the poison, when the phone in the office suddenly rang. Puff, puff. The phone bug wearing a gas mask rang extremely quickly. Magellan was slightly startled, then quickly stepped forward and answered the phone. As soon as the call was connected, Sengoku's anxious voice sounded from the phone. Magellan, Levi is tracking down the Kim pirates that Saraski captured into Impel Down 6 months ago, and they are almost there. However, before Sengoku could finish speaking, Magellan felt the underwater prison beneath his feet shaking. Boom. Advertisement. The surrounding seawater seemed to suddenly be tens of millions of times heavier, and at the same time it was squeezing towards the underwater prison. Magellan's heart was shocked. As the warden of the large underwater prison, he knew that the entire prison was extremely huge, and the interior was completely closed with no connected gaps, almost forming a hole. And this is the calm belt. Since the establishment of the underwater prison, there has never been such a shocking precedent. From the outside to the inside, the entire huge underwater prison is shaking. And Sengoku just said that Levi is about to go to the underwater prison. Roar. Deafening roars suddenly came from the monitoring screen. This was a huge screen that connected to the situation on the seabed. The sea kings in the deep seabed are roaring uneasily. The huge body like a mountain stirs up the rolling seawater, lifts up the mud on the seabed, and makes the sea turbulent and turbid. Those huge beast pupils were full of endless panic, and there was an incomparable power that was alarming the sea kings, making them instinctively frightened. However, at this moment, Magellan had no time to look at the surveillance screen on the seabed. His eyes fell on the screen monitoring the conditions on the surface and in the underwater prison. It was a white figure, standing in the distant sky, heading towards the underwater prison step by step. The windbreaker behind him was flying, as if white clouds were rolling. Every step he took was like stepping on water, causing invisible ripples to vibrate in the air. And these ripples magnified in the sky, forming a terrifying pressure as strong as a river, sweeping in all directions, terrifying the sky and riding the sea. That's Reiatsu as thick as a mountain and as vast as the sea. Open black lens bracket today's template. Aizen Sosuke close black lens bracket. Today, Reiatsu, who is equal to Aizen, one of the strongest in Shinigami, is sweeping and shaking the entire underwater prison. Looking at the figure in the sky, Magellan's eyes widened and his pupils suddenly shrank into needle shapes. Levi, here we come. Magellan, are you listening? Levi is heading to the underwater prison. Make all preparations. When necessary, he can. On the phone wearing a gas mask, Sengoku's urgent shouting kept coming. Marshal Sengoku, Levi, has arrived. Magellan held the phone and spoke in a low voice. Boom. Advertisement. The underwater prison is shaking due to Levi's arrival. At the same time, the first floor of the underwater prison. Please be quiet, don't you want to eat? Wearing a white suit, holding a trident, and looking like a little devil, the prison chief Saludes was walking on the dim street on the first floor and was on routine patrol. Behind him, a group of jailer beasts were holding lunch in their hands and distributing it to the prisoners. Hurry up. Laozi will be imprisoned for a year, and you will be in trouble if he starves to death in prison. In a cell, a pirate with an aquiline nose stretched out his hand from the prison, slapped the iron bars, and shouted dissatisfied. Saludes frowned and turned around, just about to teach this arrogant guy a lesson. And right at this moment, boom, the entire underwater prison was trembling, and then a huge pressure was like a flood, pressing towards everyone. What happened? Saludes stumbled suddenly, and he almost fell to the ground. 5.0 and behind him. Book. A group of jailer orcs fell on their backs and staggered to the ground. The dinner in their hands was spilled on the ground, and the rice bowl rolled far away. And at this moment, the hook-nosed pirate clamored for food, but he didn't say anything at all. He knelt down on the spot. Boom. The hook-nosed pirate fell to the ground like a dead dog, his eyes widened, and red bloodshot threads emerged. He wanted to struggle, but the veins on his arms were exposed, but it was useless. It was as if there was an invisible mountain pressing hard on his body, squeezing his bones until they cracked. This moment, the Reiatsu emanating from Levi envelopes the entire underwater prison. Chapter 96 Eternal Hell is in turmoil, step into Impel down. Please subscribe. At the same time, Undersea Prison, 6th floor. This is the deepest part of the underwater prison, where the most vicious criminals in the world are concentrated. When an ordinary person comes here, the murderous intention that permeates the air is enough to make him tremble. Shit. This place is called Eternal Hell. Very few people in the world know that there is a 6th level in the underwater prison, simply because the criminals imprisoned in this level are so vicious that the crimes they committed even require the world government to deliberately conceal them and erase them from history. Only in this way can the people not be afraid of lying because of what they did. Rumble. At this moment, this place where all evil is condensed is shaking slightly due to the shroud of Levi's Reiatsu. Dell. In a dark cell, Ace raised his head, and the seastone chains on his body also collided with each other, making a crisp sound. At this moment, Ace had confusion on his face and looked at Chi Ping, who was also imprisoned in chains not far away. Jinbei 17, this prison, will there be shocks? Ace's eyes flickered. Although he had been imprisoned not long ago, in fact, every day in Eternal Hell was the same. There was never any turmoil, as if time had frozen here. It flows extremely slowly. It may be that some kind of mechanism is operating. Impel down itself is indestructible. This should be the only case. Jinbei shook his head. He did not think that external forces caused the underwater prison to destabilize. Ace's eyes flashed. Is it indestructible? Speaking of which, this prison is not really like that. Didn't the Golden Lion escape once? Almost at the same time he spoke. Rumble. Eternal Hell shook even more violently, and there was even dust rolling down from the ceiling. This moment. Wow. Wow. In this deep darkness, the sound of children's metal chains sounded. One after another, the most cruel and vicious criminals in history raised their heads at this moment. The originally immersive Eternal Hell rioted at this moment. These demons imprisoned in hell showed their fangs. They were all restless at this moment. Ha 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 ha. This damn prison is shaking. Someone is definitely coming to attack this place. Is it a big pirate group that is bombarding it? Could it be that the Four Emperors pirate group is coming? In a cell, a figure as tall as a building suddenly grabbed onto the prison railings, a pair of eyes as huge as lanterns filled with excitement. This is clearly a vicious criminal from the giant race whose existence has been concealed in history. Advertisement. Come on, break through the Impel down and kill all these D jailer lackeys. I will follow whoever can give me freedom, ha 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 ha. Someone was nailed to the wall, unable to move his hands or feet, but at this moment his eyes were wide open, staring at the prison wall like a hungry wolf. He can't wait for the pirates' naval guns to break through this wall in the next second and give him his freedom. And right at this moment, in the chaotic endless hell, from the deepest part of the darkness, a faint chuckle came out. But just such a simple chuckle made the restless endless hell instantly quiet. All the vicious criminals turned their heads at the same moment and looked at the cell deep inside. Crash! The chains shook. This was a man whose whole body was bound by seastone chains. Even though all his abilities were imprisoned, he was still exuding a violent aura. This is a warning that no one is allowed to break his shackles, otherwise this era will usher in riots. He is Devil Hui, Bullet. I didn't expect that such a terrifying strong man would appear in the outside world today. This powerful force, I can clearly feel it. Bullet raised his head, and a faint red light flashed in his eyes. Hear the words. The other restless criminals outside the cell all laughed after a brief pause. Ha 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 ha. Bullet, what are you talking about? Is this the power of the strong? How can manpower shake the entire Impel down? There must be the Four Emperors pirate group attacking the Impel down, maybe it's Whitebeard. Ace, your father is here to rescue you. Bullet, have you gone crazy by staying too long? Inside the cell, black shadows were swarming one after another, and the wanton laughter was extremely harsh, like a group of demons dancing wildly. Bullet glanced at them coldly. Shut up, you bunch of bugs. He didn't explain, but looked deep in another direction. You think I'm right, Redfield. Buzz. Almost at the moment Bullet said these words. In the darkness, a pair of old eyes suddenly opened. Deep, scarlet, it seems to contain an endless rain of blood from a mountain of corpses. Advertisement. Redfield didn't speak, he just raised his head and looked at the top of his head. Above the underwater prison, Levi stood calmly, overlooking the vast sea, his dark eyes taking in everything. The Kim pirates are among them. This moment, the calm sea surface of the calm belt, which had been calm all year round, was instantly broken. The sea surface rolled instantly, setting off turbulent waves, and 10 waves violently beat the underwater prison. Rumble. The warships parked around the underwater prison were shaking violently, and the rolling sea surged again and again, as if facing a stormy night, there was a risk of sinking at any time. Steady 100. Hold on, hold on. On the warship, the Marines screamed loudly and struggled to stabilize the warship. But in the next second, boom. At the entrance gate of the undersea prison, the retracted huge suspension bridge trembled suddenly, as if it had received some kind of impact, and it strangely collapsed. Boom. The huge suspension bridge, which weighed hundreds of tons, crashed down directly, erupting with a thunderous roar and causing dust to rise into the sky instantly. Due to the fall of the suspension bridge, the road to the entrance was opened. Next second, boom. A white figure appeared leisurely on the suspension bridge. The smoke was instantly suppressed and fell to the ground, as if it was surrendering and kowtow to this figure. He is Levi. Stop him. Don't let Levi go to jail. The Marines on the surrounding escort warships saw this scene and shouted wildly. However, at this moment, the water was rolling violently and the hull was undulating up and down. They could not even stabilize the warship and could not resist at all. 545,467. Levi stepped on the suspension bridge and stepped forward. But beside him, the waves rolled violently, and a warship rolled over on the spot. Hundreds of Marines fell from the warship and fell into the sea. In the midst of this chaos, Levi has crossed the entrance to the underwater prison. Chapter 97. Impel down is in turmoil, they are seeing the light of day again. Please subscribe. Entryway. All the video phone bugs used for surveillance woke up at this moment, and all sounded sharp and urgent alarm sounds. Alert, alert, intruder, intruder, intruder. And just the next second, the piercing sirens suddenly stopped. All the screaming image phone bugs came to a standstill at the same time, being squeezed by invisible force, twisted, deformed and exploded to pieces. Bang, bang, bang. The explosions were connected in a line, and in the firelight, a white figure was slowly coming from the direction of the entrance. However, when the underwater prison was obviously invaded, not a single prison guard raised a weapon. When Levi came from the sky and Reiatsu enveloped the entire underwater prison, all the jailers on the ground floor were crushed by Levi's Reiatsu and collapsed to the ground like soft mud. Horus, the team leader who commanded the surface level of Hada prison, leaned his back against the wall, opened his eyes with difficulty, and stared at the passage flashing with explosion flames. Coming. Horus. Adam's apple twitched, his eyes narrowed, and his pupils trembled slightly. In the light of the fire, he vaguely saw a figure walking out step by step. Boom, boom, boom. With every step he took, the passage was trembling violently, and extraordinary energy filled the air, surging and striking in all directions. Rumble. It was like a big earthquake had occurred at the entrance of the passage. The tall city wall that had always stood since the construction of the undersea prison was shaken for the first time in history. Cracks spread like spider webs, and gravel rolled down. The city wall is cracking as Levi moves step by step. Horus's eyes widened in disbelief. This was all too unreal. The pressure Levi naturally exuded while walking affected everything around him and even the city walls shook. In the passage, Levi's figure gradually became clearer, and he stepped out slowly. Advertisement. This moment, the stock is as huge as a mountain, and the pressure is as manic as a hurricane, overwhelming the entire audience. The bodies of the jailers who were already paralyzed on the ground were shaking again, and the pressure on their bodies increased again, as if their bodies were about to be pushed into the ground by this huge force. At this moment, on the ground floor of Nuoda, no one could stand except Levi. They were all crushed to the ground, unable to move. Levi's dark and deep eyes calmly swept across all the jailers who were lying on the ground. He stepped forward and walked leisurely towards Horus. Wherever he passed, the pressure on all the jailers increased suddenly. Their bodies were stuck to the ground, and they could not even move their fingers. No one can stop Levi, and no one can stop him. In front of Reiatsu, who is as terrifying as Levi and as boundless as the sea, everyone can only be crushed and paralyzed by the terrain. Watching Levi walking towards him, Horus was sweating coldly. His collar tightened and his whole body was lifted up. Horus's body trembled slightly. He was lifted up by Levi and could not look into Levi's eyes. At this moment, Horus felt great fear coming over him. Chills rose from the soles of his feet, as if they were about to escape from the heavenly spirit cap. What do you want? Horus asked with trembling lips and trembling lips. Tell me which floor the Kim pirates are locked up on, and which floor all of them are on. Levi spoke calmly, but under this calmness, there was a turbulent undercurrent. Kim pirates. I don't know. Horus looked pale. It's over. I can't tell the answer Levi wants. I'm afraid I have to. Suddenly, thoughts flashed in Horus's mind. He recalled it suddenly, and said hurriedly, I know that 10 of the people I'm responsible for are from that pirate group. Lead me the way, Levi said, holding the collar of Horus's clothes, and walked towards the depths. Roar. At this moment, a large number of black shadows moved and roared out of the entrance to the underground floor. Jailermen is a combination of hundreds of humanoid and wild beasts. They raised their weapons and charged towards Levi to kill him. Watching this scene, Levi looked calm and placed his palm lightly on the hilt of the sword. A flash of sword light suddenly flashed between heaven and earth, like a ray of cold moonlight, or like a handful of clear water splashing. Advertisement. The next moment, all the jailer's animalistic running movements paused, and the roars stopped abruptly, as if time had frozen and the world had stopped spinning. Puff puff. Suddenly, heads shot up into the sky, and blood spurted out, staining the walls and ground red. The dull sounds were connected in a line, and hundreds of headless corpses fell down. Blood flowed from the cuts on their necks. The blood soaked the ground and flowed straight into the distance along the gaps in the stone tiles on the floor. Horus's body was trembling, and a few drops of blood splashed on Horus' face. The hot blood made him even more frightened. He didn't even see clearly whether Levi drew his sword. From the beginning to the end, Levi's palm was resting on the hilt of the sword, as if he didn't move. And just like that, hundreds of jailer beasts fell at Levi's feet, all of them decapitated and died. I don't want to waste time now. Levi spoke quietly. He took a few steps forward, slowly looked up and saw the camera in the corner of the ceiling watch next to him, and said softly. Don't waste my time. I'm just here to kill the Kim pirates. Kill me and leave. After saying this, he picked up the back collar of Horus's clothes and disappeared from the entrance to the underground floor. At the same time, monitor the room. Domino looked at Levi slowly walking into the underground floor from the surveillance screen, his expression extremely ugly. The last words he said before leaving were clearly transmitted to the monitoring room through the instrument. What do you mean by this, Wang Deshao? Does Levi regard the Impel down we are guarding as playing house? Domino's pretty face turned cold. For her, it is an honor to guard the underwater prison that is the most impossible to escape in the world. Domino does not allow anyone to destroy this honor. This guy is too arrogant. Salude's face was equally ugly, his small face full of anger. And right now, their expressions changed at the same time. During monitoring, the pictures on other levels are undergoing huge changes. Go and report to Warden Magellan. Saludes stood up suddenly, picked up the trident and was about to go out. I saw, in the surveillance footage, cells were opening on the second, third, fourth, and fifth floors, and one after another vicious criminals escaped from the dark cells. There are some horrific criminals among them who will never see the light of day again. Chapter 98. Wild Beast Hell, everyone commits suicide. Please subscribe. Basement level, Crimson Hell. The dark cell must have been noisy in the past, but it was extremely quiet today. Not a single prisoner or jailer spoke in the entire Crimson Hell. Everyone. They all collapsed to the ground. Reiatsu enveloped the entire audience and easily suppressed Crimson Hell. Tap, tap. In this quiet corridor, only Levi's low footsteps sounded. Well, the hook-nosed prisoner Sif raised his head from the ground with difficulty and looked at Levi with difficulty. He wanted to see clearly what kind of person he was, with such terrifying power. He didn't do anything at all, but the aura he exuded as he walked overwhelmed the entire Crimson Hell. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. The moment he saw Levi's face clearly, the prisoner's eyes suddenly shrank. This was an overly young face, a face that often appeared on wanted posters. The lone swordsman, Levi. Sifu remembered clearly that when he was arrested half a year ago, rumors about Levi had just emerged. At that time, he was looking at the wanted poster and still thinking that Levi must be in trouble and would soon be arrested and sent to the underwater prison. Now, Levi is indeed here. He was not captured, but broke through the underwater prison with terrifying power. Crimson Hell was silent, and everyone had to lie down on the ground and watch Levi leave without saying a word. Level 2, 920 Underground, Wild Beast Hell. Reiatsu shook the Impel down. One jailer after another couldn't hold on and fell, and the prison was in chaos in an instant. Ha 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 ha. Free. Run away quickly before these damn jailers react. The riot is coming. At this moment, vicious criminals broke into the cells one after another, and their crazy and wanton laughter shook the entire second floor. In a cell, a stern look flashed in the eyes of the tall fish man pirate Taki, and his fist covered with armament hockey slammed down on the cell door. Boom. Amidst the violent metal clang, the twisted iron door flew out. In the smoke and dust, Taki carried the heavy pressure brought by Reiatsu and stepped out. Ha 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 ha, I can finally see the light of day again. I don't know which pirate group is attacking Impel down. I really want to thank them. Taki tore off the iron chain on his body, his eyes flashed with bloodthirsty light, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly. Advertisement. Free at last. Help me, please, let me out, I am willing to follow you. At this moment, a faint and difficult cry for help came from a cell next to him. However, they saw an emaciated criminal being pushed to the ground by Reiatsu. He could not even stand up. He could only raise his head with great difficulty and asked for help from Tachi. Ha, idiots only care about you. Taki smiled coldly, turned around and ran towards the exit. He would not waste his escape time for this kind of waste. However, just when Taki left, a figure as tall as a hill flashed out. This is the giant pirate Blue who is 10 meters tall. Ha 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 ha. Come out, let this damn prison become empty. His face flashed with bloodthirsty and twisted excitement, he laughed and punched the iron door. Boom. The iron door exploded instantly, shattering into pieces on the spot. Iron body. Thanks. When the emaciated prisoner saw the door open, his eyes suddenly burst into intense light. Reiatsu enveloped him and oppressed him. He couldn't get up, so he climbed out using his hands and feet. Ha 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 ha. Blue laughed wildly and walked away, his figure flashing continuously, and each punch blasted an iron door, releasing each and every weak prisoner who had no ability to escape and ascend to heaven. However, these weak prisoners, even if there is no iron door to block them, under the pressure of Reiatsu, they can only crawl on their hands and feet, and cannot even stand up. And Blue is too tall and cannot hope that these weaklings will follow him. All he wants is to escalate the chaos of the underwater prison and let these damn jailers watch the pirates escape one by one. The crowd was rushing towards the exit, and Taki was the first to bear the brunt. He was only one step away from the second exit. And right now, Taki's expression changed, and he paused. He saw 10 familiar figures walking from the 10th end of the passage. That is one of the managers of the second level, Horace. It's he, BHDB, Ruth. Taki showed a fierce look, his mouth was split, and his sharp teeth flashed with cold light. He remembered how this damn prison captain used to be domineering in the past. Tear this B************ D apart. It's time for us to resist, kill him. Each of the prisoner pirates screamed wildly, their eyes filled with scarlet light, as if they were about to pounce on Horace in the next second. However, in the next second, all the pirate prisoners discovered something was wrong. Horace, his feet are in the air, and he is being held up by the neck. Advertisement. Behind Horace, a tall and straight figure came up holding the collar of his clothes. It's Levi. It turns out he's one of our own. Taki saw Levi carrying Horace, and the murderous look on his face subsided. A man from the first floor was still carrying Horace. Besides the pirates who attacked Impel down and created chaos, who else could he be? The originally bloodthirsty atmosphere suddenly cooled down, and many pirate prisoners had smiles on their faces. They skipped Levi and tried to cross over from him to escape from this damn place. There was also a pirate who asked Levi with a flattering smile. Which 4 Emperors pirate group is attacking outside? Are you a member of it? The first floor has been cleared. Have all the damn jailers been killed? See if we can follow you and join the 4 Emperors pirates. Levi watched everything in front of him calmly. He raised his palm slightly, and a layer of white mist seemed to be covering his body, as if there was water flowing. 13. There was a soft cry, and the blue sword in Levi's hand reflected a gleam of light. ... Kyoka Suigetsu. All sounds stopped suddenly. The prisoners who wanted to escape, the prisoners who spoke, all of them were blind. The open mouth was not closed, but no sound was made. The steps he took stopped in midair, neither falling nor taking back. Everyone seemed to have become a puppet, standing motionless. This is an extremely weird scene, and it makes one's hair stand on end just by looking at it. And in the next second, something even more frightening happened. All the pirate prisoners, including Taki, made the same move. They raised their hands and put them on their necks. Crack. A creepy sound suddenly resounded in this passage. This is the sound of bones breaking. All the prisoners, at this moment, exerted force on their arms at the same time and broke their necks in unison. Horace's neck widened, his whole body was shaking, and every hair on his head stood on end. He witnessed with his own eyes that all the prisoners, at this moment, all committed suicide in this incredible way. It's noisy. Levi stood calmly among the corpses, speaking very indifferently. Kyoka Suigetsu. Ability, complete hypnosis. This is a terrifying ability that can even control the opponent's 5 senses. All prisoners regard themselves as enemies and end their lives in hypnosis. Chapter 99. A tomb made of flesh and blood. Please subscribe. Horace was terrified in his heart. All this happened as too incomprehensible. How could the prisoners who yearned for freedom the most commit collective suicide when they were only one step away from freedom? Even the way of death is the same, breaking his own neck with his own palm. ... Levi, what did you do? Horace felt like his blood was turning cold with fear. At this moment, Levi's plain voice rang in Horace's ears. Where are those people? The moment he heard the sound, Horace almost trembled with fright. He quickly pointed to the 2 corpses that had collapsed on the ground and said. They are the members of the Kim Pirates. One of them is surprisingly the fish man pirate Taki. The 2 members of the Kim Pirates had dimmed eyes, twisted necks, and were completely dead. Horace looked at their miserable deaths and felt a chill in his heart. Then he thought about something, pointed to a few cells in the distance and shouted. And so are the prisoners in the cells over there. With Horace's finger, all the remaining pirate prisoners in Wild Beast Hell fell silent. There were even a few pirates who had finally managed to crawl out on their hands and knees. They were sweating coldly and crawling back like crazy. This scene looks very funny. The pirate prisoner is pressed to the ground and shrinks back into the cell like a caterpillar, but this ridiculous scene will not make anyone want to laugh. Song Neng can make people feel endless chills. They gave up the freedom they wanted to pursue. Rather than face Levi, they would rather stay in a cold cell forever. And at the same time, Levi's figure disappeared instantly, almost teleporting to the door of one of the prisons. With a flick of his thumb, the long sword hanging at his waist was unsheathed half an inch, and a cold light reflected out. Chang. The sound of the sword was as loud as thunder, and the iron door, which was so heavy that it weighed more than 1,000 kilograms, trembled. It was shattered into dozens of pieces in the cold light, and the sharp sword energy rushed in brazenly. Ah! The screams came from behind the door and then stopped abruptly. The sword light shone brightly, covering the entire cell. Several members of the Kim pirates, including their bodies, were broken into dozens of pieces. Advertisement. This was an extremely bloody scene. Human tissues were stacked neatly, like small mounds of soil. Blood and flesh almost covered the entire prison floor. The ground was stained with blood, and fragments of internal organs were spattered on the walls. It was disgusting. This scene is very similar to the two broken stone tombs on the cliff. Levi is using their flesh and blood to create a living tomb. Next, Levi didn't even look at the situation in the cell. He slowly turned around and walked towards the next prison pointed out by Horus. He caused horrific killings, but not a drop of blood was stained on his body. He was dressed in white and was spotless. Due to the blasting of many cell doors, the giant pirate Blue, who had not yet had time to run to the passage, opened his eyes wide and looked at everything in horror. The physique that made him proud in the past could not give him the slightest sense of security now. Watching Levi walking step by step, boundless fear struck, and Blue was finally crushed. His legs went weak and he knelt on the ground, screaming in panic. Don't kill me. Bulu Jing closed his eyes and held his head in his hands. At the moment when Levi came, he was like a frightened child who was at a loss what to do. Righto. Minutes passed, and Blue was trembling slightly. The death you imagined has not come. Blue moved his hands that were covering his head slightly. He carefully raised his head and looked in the distance. Levi didn't kill him, but walked to the far cell. Ah! From time to time, shrill screams came from the cell, and red blood flowed from the iron door, infecting the earth. This is Levi killing people. He is using cruel methods to kill all the members of the Kim pirates. Horus wanted to close his eyes. This scene was too bloody and cruel. Any prisoner would scream and die miserably when facing Levi, unable to even perform the most basic resistance. Even the screams can only be made with Levi's permission. In the identified cell, the last prisoner fell to the ground, his body shattered into pieces of flesh. There are others, do you know where they are? Levi lifted Horus up and turned it so that he could look at him. Quote. I don't know anymore. Asterisk. Advertisement. Horus trembled slightly, and even his words were a bit choppy, but I know that there are also their people on the third floor. Hear the words. Levi sends Horus away. He is one of the managers on the second level. It is normal not to know the situation on the third level. His role as a guide is over, and the remaining people still need to find it on their own. Levi's expression didn't change much as he walked towards the deep third floor. Horus fell to the ground and ran away without looking back. His face was filled with joy of surviving the disaster. This day was definitely the scariest day he had ever experienced. On the other side, Levi was walking on the passage leading to the third underground floor. He clearly felt that the temperature in the air suddenly rose and was extremely hot. If an ordinary person were to stay here for a while, he would be sweating profusely, the heat would be unbearable, and he would even be in danger of dehydration. Point 0. This is the third underground level, the characteristics of Starvation Hell. All the prisoners imprisoned in Starvation Hell are extremely vicious criminals with a bounty of more than 50 million belly. And this high temperature is their punishment. At this moment, Levi could clearly hear chaotic roars coming from Starvation Hell. It seemed that many prisoners had escaped and were fighting with the jailers. Ha. Lousy finally came out, I have to kill a few more people. In front of the passage, there was an excited roar. A naked pirate with scars all over his body rushed towards Levi. He is the prisoner Kriya who once massacred an entire village. Now his eyes are red with excitement and he can't wait to kill ordinary people. And just the next moment, Kriya made a move and saw Levi walking in front of the passage. He has a tall and straight figure, a pair of dark eyes, and a heart-stopping aura circulating in every move he makes. Kriya stopped walking, looked up at Levi, and spoke hoarsely. What do you? The next second, Kriya's questioning stopped abruptly. The faint light in the passage shone on Kriya's body, casting a shadow on the wall. It was a headless black shadow. Kriya's head detached from the body and soared into the sky. Chapter 100. We are all members of the Kim Pirates. Please subscribe. Plop. In the dark passage, Kriya's headless body fell, and the dull sound slowly echoed. Ha. Damn jailer, I don't have to be tortured anymore. Dahai, Lousy is here. At the other end of the passage, several more pirates ran out, and their faces were all morbidly excited. But in the next second, The excitement on everyone's faces solidified and was replaced by intense astonishment. I saw. Kriya, who ran out first, fell to the ground with her head and body separated. Dark red blood seeped out from the wound. She was obviously dead. Next to Kriya's body, Levi stood quietly. He was clearly right in front of him, but he gave people a vague feeling, as if he didn't exist at all and was just Kyoka Suigetsu. One of the pirates opened his mouth and wanted to talk. The next second, his expression froze, and his head shot up into the sky. The expression on his face was still full of disbelief. His death was exactly the same as Kriya's, 207. In just an instant, all the pirates in the passage were dead. You can't leave. Levi looked at the dead pirates, his eyes lowered and he spoke softly. He didn't know who the Kim pirates were, and he didn't bother to question them one by one. Instead of doing this, he would rather kill everyone who wanted to escape. He would rather kill the wrong person than let them go. Withdrawing his gaze, Levi walked through the passage and came to the third level of Starvation Hell. He stood at the entrance of the passage and on the high platform stairs, and the entire scene on the third floor came into view. In Starvation Hell, prisoners are not only subjected to high temperatures, but their food supply is also reduced. Levi has seen many skinny prisoners who cannot move due to hunger. Look, then, who was that? The skeleton prisoner, who was so hungry that his eyes were glowing green, raised his head. He had almost only the last layer of skin left and was about to starve to death at any time. Okay, it doesn't seem like he's a jailer. Next to him, the prisoner who was missing an arm raised his head. His condition was slightly better, but he was still suffering from hunger and miserable. The skeleton-like prisoner trembled when he heard this, and his green eyes seemed to have grasped the last straw for survival. He used his last strength to stand up and shouted loudly. Help! People standing on the high platform over there, as long as you are willing to give me some food, I am willing to join your pirate group and work hard for you. As soon as these words came out, many skinny prisoners around him seemed to have grasped hope and spoke one after another. Help me. All I need is a bottle of water. I can kill anyone for you. Please, I have buried a lot of treasures outside, as long as you give me food. Advertisement. The place suddenly became noisy, and even the pirate prisoners who were not so hungry that they lost the ability to move and were fighting with the jailers to escape noticed Levi's arrival. Quiet. At the focus of hundreds of eyes, Levi spoke quietly. I am here to save the Kim pirates. Tell me who is the Kim pirates. Those who answer correctly will be rewarded, even if it means saving you. Impossible things. As soon as these words came out, the whole Starvation Hell is boiling. The skeleton-like prisoner actually stood up under this temptation. He stretched out his trembling arms, pointed at himself, and yelled crazily. I am a member of the Kim pirates, please save me, I want food, give me food. The one-armed prisoner was stunned for a moment when he heard this. He knew, the person next to him was not a member of the Kim pirates at all. Next moment, the eyes of the one-armed prisoner burst out with light, that's right. So what if it's not the Kim pirates, it doesn't matter at all. As long as you say you are, you will have a chance to escape. I am a member of the Kim pirates, and I am still a cadre. Please save me first. The one-armed prisoner immediately jumped up, waved to Levi, and shouted with all his strength, fearing that Levi wouldn't hear. More and more people reacted, shouting wildly, and kept yelling that they were members of the Kim pirates. At the same time, there are also prisoners who are anxious, pointing at someone and shouting, he is the member of the Kim pirates, the others are all fake, give me a reward, I want water, no, I want bread. After all, such people are in the minority, and more people point to themselves as members of the Kim pirates. At this moment, an extremely ridiculous scene occurred in Starvation Hell. More than half of the prisoners, thousands of them, all insisted at the same time, I am the leader of the Kim pirates. *7. Levi nodded slightly. The next second, the weapon in his hand lit up with a faint light, and air currents and mist appeared out of thin air, surrounding Levi. Kyoka Suigetsu. Complete hypnosis, activate again. All the prisoners who stared at the light had their eyes slightly glazed over and were briefly dazed, but everything quickly returned to normal. The one-armed prisoner who had been staring at Levi suddenly turned his head and looked at the skeleton prisoner next to him who was so thin that only skin and bones remained. Advertisement. This moment, the one-armed prisoner was emaciated due to hunger, and his protruding eyeballs burst out with terrifying light. #VD. He stared at the person next to him with a strange arc at the corner of his mouth. He stood up unsteadily and pounced directly on them. Laugh. The one-armed prisoner bit the opponent's thigh hard, and with a flick of his head, he tore a piece of bloody flesh from the thigh alive. However, the prisoner who had a piece of flesh bitten off felt no pain at all. He also opened his mouth and bit the one-armed prisoner's neck. The one-armed prisoner's eyes suddenly dimmed. PFF'd. Blood gushes out, and the man lies on the neck of the one-armed prisoner, greedily sucking the blood that spurts out, and keeps shouting. Water. There is water. The skeleton prisoner had no idea that he had bitten a person to death. His eyes were full of desire and excitement, as if he finally got what he wanted. In his eyes, the blood spurting out from the one-armed prisoner is sweet water. However, Before Rossio could enjoy it for long, another thin prisoner behind him rushed up and bit the skeleton prisoner's abdomen while shouting the word bread. The cannibalism has begun. This scene is happening everywhere in Starvation Hell. 5.7. He insists that he is a prisoner of the Kim pirates. Or the prisoners who were identified as the Kim pirates, all went crazy at this time. Their eyes were red, and they opened their big mouths to bite the people around them. It seems, in their eyes, the other person is no longer a human being, but the food they dream of. Levi stood on the high platform, his dark eyes calmly overlooking the prisoners below who had begun to kill each other. They are all prisoners who insist that they are the Kim pirates, or are identified as belonging to the Kim pirates. Since everyone says he is, then go to hell, dying in hypnosis in Kyoka Suigetsu, eating others as food, and then being killed by others as food. Levi's eyes were very dull, so dull that it made people feel frightened. This time, he will not let anyone from the Kim pirates go. Kill 1,000 by mistake and never let one go. Chapter 101. Magellan's Obstruction, Shiryu was released. Please subscribe. Hangchi, Bangchi. The sounds of biting, chewing, and bleeding echoed faintly in this starvation hell, which was terrifying. This is a shocking scene. Thousands of extremely hungry prisoners regard each other as food, biting each other's flesh and blood crazily. Everyone seems to have lost their sense of pain and will never stop until they eat each other clean or are eaten clean. What on earth is going on? Those prisoners who did not insist that they were the Kim pirates had their scalps exploded with a bang. This scene scared them to the core. People are eating people. In Starvation Hell, this kind of thing did happen when the prisoners were starved to the ultimate level, but it would never be like this, with thousands of prisoners huddled together, killing each other and biting each other. And the person who caused this hellish scene. One of the prisoners raised his head and looked at Levi, who was standing calmly on the high platform, overlooking the bottom. He obviously didn't do anything, or even just said a few words, to cause such a bloody and terrifying thing. I don't know if it was an illusion, but at this moment, the prisoner felt that Levi was watching him. Dang, thump, stare. At this moment, the prisoner retreated crazily. He actually gave up the opportunity to escape and retreated directly into the prison, choosing to lock himself up. However, even so, the prisoner was still walking backwards until his back hit the wall and he reacted as if he had just woken up from a dream. Cold sweat has soaked my whole body. What kind of ability is this? He looked up at Levi's figure, and the mountain of corpses and sea of blood were reflected in his pupils, which made him feel horrified. His hair stood on end, and he felt a deep sense of powerlessness. This man is simply a devil. He doesn't even know what Levi did, but all these changes must be related to Levi. Levi turned the entire starvation hell into a real hell, a veritable hell of hungry ghosts. The fifth emperor. A jailer recognized Levi's identity. His whole body was cold and he couldn't help trembling slightly. From the beginning to the end, Levi only said a few words, and the power of words bewitched thousands of pirates. All the jailers had a look of fear on their faces. This was the fear of the unknown. This power to control people's hearts made anyone feel irresistible, and despair welled up deep in their hearts. Advertisement. There were also some hungry prisoners lying on the ground, trembling. They did not dare to speak at all, and no sound came out of their mouths. Until now, they can't even tell whether the members of the Kim pirates will be killed by Levi, or whether they will die just by talking. Except for the thousands of pirates who spoke first, everyone was silent. This brings two weird extremes to starvation hell. On one side, thousands of pirates killed each other, cannibalizing each other's flesh bit by bit. The other party was huddled in the corner, not daring to make a sound. The only thing that made these trembling prisoners happy was that the cannibalization and killing did not last long. Those prisoners who admitted that they were members of the Kim pirates were already tortured by hunger to the point of going crazy, with little physical strength left, and soon fell down one after another. In the entire starvation hell, more than 80% of the prisoners will die in this Kyoka Suigetsu. Levi stood on the high platform, scanning the bottom indifferently. The flesh and blood were thick and covered the ground. Everywhere you looked, there were corpses with only white bones left. Some even had their bones chewed into pieces. The death was so miserable that few prisoners could recognize their faces. On the third floor, all people who may be members of the Kim pirates must be eliminated. Levi's figure flashed. The white trench coat rolled behind him, and he had already landed on the ground. He created a horrific massacre with every move of his hands, but he remained unmoved. He walked among the white bones with an indifferent expression, like a demon king who ruled the world. Under his feet, thousands of bones are piled up. All the jailers were horrified at this moment. At this moment, they already knew that the person who broke into the underwater prison was the fifth emperor Levi, but how to resist when faced with a demon whose methods can no longer be described by common sense? They could only watch Levi walking towards the next floor. That's all. Watching Levi's back gradually disappearing at the entrance to the fourth floor, someone finally couldn't help but speak. I just told you who the Kim pirates are, didn't you say there was a reward? His eye sockets are sunken and his skin is cracked like tree bark. It is obvious that he is reaching his limit. Even if he is not killed by Levi, he will not be able to resist starvation hell for long. Advertisement. No matter what, it was death, and he had already risked it. Levi stopped, turned his head slightly, and turned his face to the prisoner who spoke. I am known as the worst person outside, a big pirate. You have lived so long, do you think I can believe my words? Before he finished speaking, the corners of Levi's lips raised, and a chuckle echoed faintly in the starvation hell. He has entered the next level. The questioning prisoner's eyes widened. He looked at Levi leaving and wanted to curse, but he didn't dare to speak at all. Because of Levi's power, Magellan didn't dare to underestimate him and immediately released Shiryu. Although Levi said he would leave after killing everyone, how could he be sure of the fact? Even if he doesn't live for a few days, he is not willing to become someone else's food. Magellan felt Levi's gaze. The depths of his eyes were full of solemnity, and he said in a deep voice. Levi, this is Impel down. Your trespassing has violated the iron law of Impel down. Beside him, a burly figure stood. He was holding a cigar in his mouth and carrying the famous sword Thunderstorm at his waist. It was Shiryu who was banned for being excessively bloodthirsty. Levi's eyes swept across them, finally stopping on Magellan, and said softly. A group of figures who were ready to go blocked Levi's way. The leader was tall and burly. Just standing there without any movement caused the air to turn into deep purple at a speed visible to the naked eye, as if it was about to drip out of viscosity, of venom. Levi has passed through the passage of starvation hell and set foot on the 4th level of blazing hell. The other side. Once this happens, the undersea prison can no longer be called the best prison in the world, and all the guards of the entire prison will have no glory at all. I said, I only look for people from the Kim pirates. Once I find them and kill them, I will leave. There is no need to stop me. He is surprisingly the warden of the undersea prison, Mag 900 Loon. Are you Levi? I've heard of you. To say the least, even if Magellan believed Levi, as the warden of the underwater prison, he would not be able to cooperate with the intruders. He was afraid that as soon as he spoke his words, the dead would not know how to die. If you really want me to leave, you should cooperate with me and find the members of the Kim pirates, Magellan. N. At this moment, Shiryu stood up. He bit his cigar and took a deep breath, with a breathtaking light flashing in his eyes. And at the entrance to blazing hell. Chapter 102 Killed Levi. Please subscribe. Levi, the 5th emperor of the outside world, has ever-changing abilities. Even Mihawk admitted that he is not as good as you in terms of swordsmanship, and gave up the title of the world's greatest swordsman. It's really makes me want to see it. A bright light of knowledge flashed through Shiryu's eyes as he stared at Levi. The corners of his mouth were raised, and his low words were mixed with a hint of excitement. You are interested, but I am not. Levi shook his head slightly, resting his palm on the hilt of the sword. The blue long sword was half an inch out of its sheath, and the blade reflected a strange light, as if a faint stream of water and mist appeared on the surface of his body at this moment. Kyoka Suigetsu, activated quietly. Fight with me first. A strong desire to kill appeared on Shiryu's face, and observation haki locked Levi in his eyes. The words just fell. An extremely violent aura emerged from Shiryu's body, and the famous sword Thunderstorm was unsheathed. Chang. The thunderstorm slashed across the sky, and the terrifying sword energy rushed in like a torrent, and the entire passage was trembling because of the sword energy. The great swordsman's strength exploded without reservation. This is the ultimate sword that Shiryu honed by brutally killing countless prisoners. It is so precise that its strength, speed, and even the angle of slashing and killing are impeccable and perfect. BG. Levi also moved. The long sword on his waist was completely unsheathed, and he slashed forward, creating a bright sword light. There was not much murderous intent, but it revealed dreams and splendor. At the same time, go together. Magellan holds a flintlock gun in his hand, exhales large swaths of purple poisonous mist, and rushes towards Levi. Beside him, all the jailers wearing gas masks took action. Roar. Some people turned into lions while running, some people's fists carried a faint golden light, and some people even turned into liquid. There is no doubt that it is all demon fruit power. Next moment. Boom. Boom. The two sword lights collided violently, and the sound of metal clanging was like a sharp phoenix cry, which made people's eardrums hurt. Magellan, who was charging, stared forward, his eyes widening. Advertisement. Something unexpected happened. Shiryu's sword tore through Levi's sword light with an extremely powerful gesture, and slashed towards Levi's chest. The air waves were like sharp knives, cutting into all directions. The closed passage trembled violently at this moment, and thick smoke slowly filled the air. Then the smoke dissipated. Two figures standing and colliding with each other were revealed. Shiryu holds Liu, almost close to Levi's body, and the famous sword Liu in his hand. Stabbed into Levi's chest. Levi's eyes were dim, his body was slumped slightly, and blood was gurgling on his chest, as if he had lost the characteristics of life. Magellan's forward steps suddenly stopped, and he was a little dazed. Levi's strength was obvious to all. Even before he reached the undersea prison, his inexplicable pressure alone made the entire undersea prison tremble. Such a man was killed by Shiryu's sword. Watching Levi die, Magellan not only did not breathe a sigh of relief, but felt ridiculous. Shiryu is indeed very strong, and he is also called the Iron Wall of the underwater prison. But no matter how strong Shiryu is, can he kill Levi with one sword? This is impossible. Even Shiryu was stunned. He frowned, and the bright light of knowledge flashed in his eyes. He didn't think Levi died like this, but his experience told him that Levi was indeed pierced through the chest by his own sword and died. What happened? Shiryu can't decide. This is too weird. No, something's wrong. Shiryu, come back quickly. Magellan's eyes were full of solemnity and he immediately spoke out. He didn't believe anything he said. Levi died like this. I know. Shiryu bit his cigar. Regardless of whether Levi was really dead or not, he should not stay by Levi's side now. He suddenly drew his sword and was about to retreat. All this happens in an instant. However, at this moment, a calm but magnetic voice sounded in Shiryu's ears. That's almost it. The voice rang out. Advertisement. Shiryu turned around suddenly. What greeted him was a chilling sword light. Levi appeared beside him at some point, drawing his sword and slashing. Moreover, Levi, who was stabbed to death by Shiryu, is disappearing little by little. Shiryu heart. Magellan shouted. He had already rushed forward the moment Levi suddenly appeared. At this moment, blazing hell is shaking. Opening square bracket. Boom. Hash. Within the passage, there was an earth-shaking terrifying roar, the surrounding walls were trembling, cracks appeared, and the entire blazing hell was shaking. The boiling water in the furnace splashed, burning holes on the ground. Moreover, fierce air waves will continue to come from the passage, and the aftermath of the collision will come one after another, making blazing hell feel like an earthquake. But that direction, there's no one there. In the cell, someone suddenly raised his head. He stared in the direction of the passage, his brows suddenly furrowed, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Even the pillars standing 100 meters away were shattered by the aftermath of the shock in the channel. Can humans really do this? Bonus's eyes widened. It's hard to imagine how terrifying it would be if this was really someone fighting. Fight. There was a touch of shock in Bonus's eyes, money related. Just the aftermath of the fight was so destructive that Bonus even saw bricks and chains shattered by the residual power coming from the passage. Bonus raised his head, narrowed his eyes, and the bright light of knowledge flashed. Magellan just led a group of people to the passage. I see that his face is still very serious. Even Shiryu came out. Maybe there is an invasion and they are fighting. What happened? He was trying to see what was inside the passage. He is clearly Mr. 1, Daz Bones, who was captured on the 4th floor. He clearly saw that in the passage, Shiryu was slashing in one direction. But the next moment. But, if someone invades the underwater prison, we will have a chance to escape, right? Next to Bonus, another prisoner suddenly spoke. He swallowed and looked extremely weird. Could it be that someone is in charge of this? Chapter 103 Reality or Illusion? Magellan surrenders. Please subscribe. Shiryu, cutting the air. Bonus was stunned. This scene was so weird. Shiryu seemed to be possessed by a maniac, and he relentlessly slashed at the air with his sword moves. The sound was so powerful that it shook the entire passage. But the key point is, even Bonus clearly saw a figure standing next to Shiryu. He was dressed in white. He was obviously not the jailer of the underwater prison, but probably an intruder. But Shiryu completely ignored this person, as if he didn't exist at all. Not only that, but even Magellan is like this. He uses all his firepower and spreads his poisonous gas wantonly, but what he sees is still nothing but air. Looking at this scene, Bonus shuddered and goosebumps appeared on his arms. Blazing hell was extremely hot, but at this moment he felt a chill coming from his heart. Doesn't this look like a ghost from a great story? Bonus didn't even know whether there was something wrong with Shiryu or Magellan, or whether he saw someone who didn't exist at all. However, the next second, Bonus had no time to think. The white figure made a move. He took steps and walked slowly behind Shiryu. Shiryu is completely unaware of this. The white figure stood behind Shiryu, already raising the long sword in 780's hand. Nothing fancy, nothing earth-shattering, just a simple lift, and then slashed at Shiryu with the sword. Puff. Bonus. Eyes trembled, and he saw. Shiryu's body was broken into 2 pieces by this sword, and bright red blood spurted out. This terrifying executioner who made countless prisoners in the undersea prison fearful was actually cut in half in such an easy way at this moment. Broken at the waist, no one can survive such an injury. Shiryu is dead. The most horrifying thing is that Shiryu died right in front of Magellan's eyes, but Magellan still didn't react at all. The white figure, like a ghost, holds the long sword in his hand and walks towards Magellan again. Today, I'm afraid Impel Down will be turned upside down. Bonus took a deep breath and witnessed the whole process of Shiryu's death. He already knew that this was not a supernatural event, but some kind of special ability. At the same time, in the channel. Advertisement. Laugh. Levi raised his sword and slashed, creating a faint sword light. Magellan, who was filled with poisonous gas, flew out on the spot, BHDH, and with great force, he hit the wall of the passage and made a huge hole. 13x. Magellan coughed up a mouthful of blood, his body slipped from the wall, and he collapsed weakly on the ground. There was a ferocious sword mark on his chest, and blood was pouring out. This severe pain caused a faint light to flash in Magellan's eyes. The illusion he saw was finally shattered. What's going on? Magellan struggled to get up, but the sight in front of him made him feel cold all over. I saw that Shiryu had fallen to the ground, his body divided into two halves, and the upper half of his body was close to Magellan's head. When Magellan looked up, he could even see the shocked look on Shiryu's face. Shiryu died like this. And further away, the jailers fell to the ground in a mess, with ferocious sword wounds on their bodies, all of them killed by a single sword. Magellan's pupils suddenly narrowed, and the scene in front of him had a violent impact on him, so much so that Magellan was in a trance. In his memory, after Shiryu pierced Levi with a sword, Levi, who was supposed to be killed, appeared inexplicably out of thin air and fought with Shiryu again. Levi is indeed powerful. Even if Shiryu goes all out, he cannot cause harm to Levi. Even if Magellan leads many demon fruit power jailers to attack together, he can only barely hold Levi. Magellan even prepared to fight to the death, using his life to block Levi and waiting for Marine's support. But just now, Magellan suddenly felt a pain in his chest, when he opened his eyes again. Shiryu is dead. All the jailers are dead too, he was the only one left in the audience. Magellan only felt that he had a splitting headache, he could no longer distinguish between reality and illusion. He had no idea whether the scene in front of him was an illusion like when Levi faked his death. Not far away, Levi bent down and picked up Shiryu's sword, the famous sword Thunderstorm, from the pool of blood. Chang! With a flick of Levi's wrist, all the blood on the Thunderstorm was shattered, glowing with cold light again. Advertisement. He sheathed the Thunder Rain return sword, slung it on his waist, and stepped towards Magellan, who had collapsed on the ground and had difficulty getting up. Sometimes people can't be too old-fashioned. You Marines are just a group of people who think more about justice than reason, and there are too many corruptions. Levi walked up to Magellan, looked down at him condescendingly, and spoke softly. He only came to kill members of the Kim pirates, and he would leave after killing everyone. This was stated from the beginning, but Magellan and the others still wanted to stop him. This seemed pedantic to Levi. Magellan gasped, lying on the ground, looking at Levi with his eyes, without flinching. Kill or behead him as you see fit. He no longer cared whether it was a hallucination or reality. The pain in his body and the coma caused by excessive blood loss made Magellan unable to resist at all. Magellan knew that he had lost and could no longer resist Levi. Levi's dark eyes were calm, and he spoke softly. Magellan, do you think I really want to kill you, and you will survive until now? Magellan's face changed suddenly. He knew what Levi was thinking. He would never give up until he achieved his goal. Levi said softly. He stretched out two fingers, Without much time to think, Magellan immediately said, I promise you. Magellan's face changed as he thought about what would happen. Magellan fell silent. Magellan was about to refuse, but was interrupted by Levi. He counts directly from 2 as soon as he comes. Tell me where everyone in the Kim pirates is. As the warden, you should know very well. Levi expressed his intention again. He squatted down in the direction of Magellan's head, his dark eyes looking down at Magellan. Magellan, who was lying down in a large font, inevitably met Levi's eyes. This guy must have done it on purpose. From such a pair of eyes, Magellan felt a biting chill. I've said from the beginning that I'm here to kill the Kim pirates, and I don't want to waste time. Levi looked down at Magellan, his tone steady. If he didn't say anything, Levi would definitely find another jailer. Think about it for 3 seconds and I'll count to 3. Magellan was silent for a moment. What do you want to do? I remember there are many guards in this prison. Chapter 104. A chill that is even more bone-chilling than freezing hell. Please subscribe. I promise you. After Magellan said these words, his whole body seemed to have taken his last breath and suddenly collapsed on the ground. As the warden of the underwater prison, I actually surrendered to the intruders. A wry smile appeared on Magellan's lips. However, in the next second, Magellan's body trembled, and he felt that his legs were tied by something, accompanied by a deep feeling of powerlessness. His fruit power has gone silent. Magellan was startled. He looked up and saw that Levi had a seastone chain in his hand, and the chain had been tied to his ankle. Levi weighed the number 2 universal capsule and nodded slightly. He didn't care what Magellan thought. He grabbed the chain without any reason and dragged him directly. On the other side, the 5th floor, freezing hell. Freezing hell is completely opposite to blazing hell. It is a land of ice and snow, and the temperature of the large ice house is even lower. The prisoners detained here can only watch their bodies suffer severe frostbite until they die. The prisoners imprisoned on this floor are all brutal pirates with a bounty of over 100 million. In the ice and snow of freezing hell, the cells are not densely spaced and stand sporadically in the snow. These cells are made of tough ice, which makes the prisoners inside extremely painful. In a prison cell, a thin man whose whole body was covered in cold air, and even his hair was frozen into ice cubes, suddenly raised his head. This action caused a lot of ice chips to fall on his body. However, his eyes were still shining brightly, and there was no sign of frostbite at all. This man is none other than one of the most famous prisoners imprisoned in freezing hell, Rocky Thompson. There seems to be a big movement over at Magellan, and many of the guards on this floor have been mobilized. Thompson's eyes were burning, staring in the distant direction. As you can see, there are significantly fewer guards patrolling freezing hell. At this moment, most of the creatures unique to this layer, The military wolves are wandering on guard. Isn't there really an invasion? Advertisement next to Thompson, George Blake, who also left a dark mark on history, raised his head, his face changing. Can you still do this? Could it be that the 4 emperors are coming? Whitebeard? Just as Blake finished speaking, a figure suddenly appeared in the ice and snow. Thompson turned his eyes instantly, and after seeing the scene in the distance clearly, his eyes suddenly widened. It was a man wearing a white windbreaker. He was walking in the ice and snow. There was an inexplicable power surrounding him, which slightly distorted the light. Even the ice chips scattered in the air would change direction strangely and fall to the ground when they approached him. And what really shocked Thompson was, in this man's hand, he is dragging a 10-meter-long chain, and on the other end of the chain, tied is the strongest person in the underwater prison, the Warden Magellan. Asterisk. Thompson couldn't believe his eyes. As a prisoner on the 5th floor, he tried to escape, and that time, he bumped into Magellan, who happened to be patrolling the 5th floor. That day, Magellan left an indelible psychological shadow on Thompson. If Magellan had not spared his hand, he would have been killed by Magellan. In this closed prison, Magellan's ability is invincible. Any prisoner facing him will be defeated. This is why the undersea prison is called the prison with the least possibility of escape. However, the strongest Magellan is now being dragged around with a chain like a dead dog? Thompson could clearly see that Magellan had a bloody gash on his body. Obviously he had been defeated by this man. Who is he? Thompson looked carefully at the man walking in the distance, but he could not find this face in his memory. Beside him, Blake took a deep breath, frowned, and then said after a while, I seem to have seen him on a wanted poster. As for who it is, Blake really can't remember. At the same time, Levi was dragging Magellan forward in the snow. He exuded majestic ryotsu, blocking the cold wind and even the ice shoulders. The unbearable hypothermia for prisoners poses no threat to Levi at all. Where are they? Advertisement. Levi turned his head and asked Magellan, who was being dragged behind him. Magellan spoke weakly and gave several addresses. Why kill me? And the method must be extremely cruel. Levi nodded slightly and dragged Magellan towards a cell. However, before he could think about it, Levi suddenly changed direction and walked into a cell. There was obviously no one left alive in the cell. Next moment, he's leaving. Blake swallowed and saw Levi changing direction and walking towards the distance. Thompson's heart trembled. He never expected that Levi would kill people as soon as he came. An extremely miserable cry was heard, accompanied by the dull sound of weapons piercing flesh. Not long after, Levi dragged Magellan out of the cell. Behind him, streams of blood flowed out of the cell, dyeing the snow-covered ground red. Even if he can't see the scene in the cell, just hearing the screams can make people think of what kind of torture the prisoners are suffering. That man is here. What is he going to do? Originally, he was still thinking about asking Levi for help and asking Levi to save him, but now, he was just glad that Levi didn't walk into his cell. Thompson's eyes widened as he saw Levi walking towards their cell. Don't. Is he an intruder? How many people did he come here to kill? Thompson's lips were trembling. The unbearable low temperature of freezing hell was completely inferior to the chill brought by Levi. This kind of ghost-like scream made even Thompson tremble in his heart. Chapter 105. Insult the 5th Emperor and commit suicide by biting his tongue. Please subscribe. The 6th floor of the underwater prison, Eternal Hell. Jinbei, I have a feeling something big is going to happen. In the dark cell, Ace raised his head, looking up at the ceiling, thoughtfully. Jinbei groaned, raised his eyebrows slightly, and said with a smile. Could it be that Newgate really came to rescue you? Although he said it in a joking tone, Jinbei actually believed in this possibility. If it were Whitebeard's shock fruit, it might really be able to shake the underwater prison. I really don't want Dad to come. Ace lowered his head, an obscure light flashing in his eyes. Whitebeard is already old. If he really comes to attack the underwater prison, how much damage will the entire White group suffer? Ace is unsure, and he doesn't want to see this happen. And just at this time, 193, clatter, clatter. At the entrance to Eternal Hell, there was suddenly a sound of metal chains being dragged, followed by the sound of footsteps. The entire Eternal Hell fell silent instantly, and almost all the prisoners raised their heads at this moment and looked towards the entrance. Ace also looked up at the same time, with a glimmer of light in his eyes, and he saw through the darkness. At the entrance, a tall and straight figure was walking slowly. He was holding a chain in his hand, and the end connected to it was a Magellan. At this moment, Magellan was in an extremely embarrassed state. He was dragged directly on the ground, his back rubbed against the ground, his clothes were in tatters, and his bloody back was exposed. In the prison, a burly figure stared at Levi and Magellan in the darkness, with a sarcastic smile on his lips. Magellan, were you defeated by a brat? You were dragged like a dead dog. Where did your dignity as the warden go? The person speaking is none other than the King of Evil. Ha 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 ha. Magellan, you look really ugly now. Magellan, you are so ridiculous. In the dark cell, every prisoner was taunting Magellan mercilessly, and at the same time, they were also looking at Levi, who was dragging Magellan. This was a brand new face, and many prisoners frowned secretly, as they did not recognize Levi's identity. Advertisement. However, Jinbei, who was locked in a cell with Ace, stared. It was him. He recognized Levi's identity. Before Jinbei was imprisoned, he didn't often see news about Levi on wanted posters or even in newspapers. Defeated Kaido's fifth emperor, Levi. It's him. Crocodile, whose whole body was imprisoned, suddenly raised his head and looked at Levi with a glimmer of light in his eyes. As soon as these words came out, many prisoners turned their eyes and looked in the direction of Crocodile. Who is this? Crocodile, who is this? Many prisoners heard Crocodile's voice and asked. A big pirate with a bounty of 1 billion. Crocodile said. As soon as these words were spoken, the sound of clattering chains was heard in the dark prison, and everyone subconsciously looked outside to get a clear look at Levi. Are you kidding? One prisoner's eyes narrowed. How could a pirate with $1 billion bounty beat Magellan like this, and even reach the 6th floor? If the underwater prison was really so easy to invade, he would have escaped long ago. As soon as the prisoner finished speaking, Jinbei, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Crocodile, you are ignorant. Jinbei's eyes flashed. He knew that Crocodile was imprisoned before Levi became emperor, and he had no idea of Levi's terror. This is the new emperor who rules the sea, the 5th sea emperor. Jinbei said solemnly, his eyes were full of solemnity. The new emperor. Are Whitebeard, Kaido, Charlotte Linlin, and Shanks all dead? Let a kid become the new emperor. In the darkness, the evil king spoke, his words full of sarcasm. What a lucky kid. I took advantage of the opportunity of the times and became the new emperor. If I hadn't been imprisoned, I would have been the one to become the new emperor. Basque Choate, who was wearing a clown hat, spoke up, making no secret of his contempt for Levi. I see that the previous 4 emperors are indeed old, just like Whitebeard. I guess they are too old to move now, right? Someone else spoke in the darkness, his words full of provocation. Shut up. Everyone. Advertisement. Ace suddenly shouted, his face suddenly turned cold, his eyes were full of coldness, and he said in a cold voice, Dad is not someone you guys can slander. Ace, I heard that you were chasing Blackbeard but were defeated, right? If this trend continues, your father may be pushed down by Blackbeard one day. The prisoner who spoke earlier sneered back. You. Ace was about to speak, but the sound of chains came closer. Single quote. Levi has already dragged Magellan over. The nearly legendary figures are just a group of people who have gone crazy after being locked up for a long time. His words were very plain, filled with a kind of indifference. Many prisoners looked around after hearing this, their deep gazes focused on Levi like knives. The king of evil raised a sneer on his lips. The times outside have changed a long time ago. Whitebeard is about to die. A guy who was lucky enough to become the emperor. Do you really think you have the right to make irresponsible remarks to me? Kid, let me out, and I can give you countless money. Choate said with a loud smile, without any respect for the new emperor in his words. Hear the words. Levi turned his head suddenly and looked over with a pair of dark eyes. Almost instantly, the famous sword Liuqi in his hand glowed slightly, and this light was reflected in the eyes of the evil king and Choate. Kyoka Suigetsu, hypnosis. Next moment, something that shocked everyone happened. The evil king and Choate opened their mouths at the same time, their scarlet tongues sticking out forcefully, and then bite it down with all your strength. The only result of such an action would be 2 pieces of the scarlet tongue were bitten off on the spot and fell to the ground. Puff. Blood spurted out from the mouths of the evil king and Choate. Their eyes were protruding, white and ferocious, and the breath of life was rapidly passing away. On the ground, half of the tongue was still bleeding. No one expected that these 2 big pirates who had spoken rudely to Levi would bite their tongues and commit suicide the second after their words were spoken.